So we're already in order. We were in executive session. So if it's okay, we can move immediately into the work session. And so we've already called the roll and everything. And I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Okay, again, good evening, everyone. So tonight, during our work session, we have two presentations tonight, and one would be career and technical education, and the second one is our gifted program. So we'll start with our career and tech plan, and Brad is going to present to us regarding strategic plan goal 1 and 2 specifically, how our CTE plans align to the district plan, and some expansions that we've done with the Tri-Heights Consortium. So we're really excited about the work that we have done with our CTE program thus far. If you recall, when I first arrived to the district, and there was a lot of concern about CTE and how can we make it a more viable program. We even have Molly Lewis in the back, who was one of the ones who sent me a long email about some things that I should do with the program, and I commissioned her and some others to work. They formed a task force. And with the task force, I said, just bring me a recommendation of what we should do to really make this a viable program. And they worked for several months and presented a thick packet of things that we should do, and one of them was making sure that we started with an exceptional leader. And we did that, and Brad applied for the job and has been with the district now almost 2 years and has done some great work. And continued to work with the task force that he inherited from that good work. And I appreciate Malia and all the others who have really worked with technical education. And really, I think because of the work that you've done, really refocused us as a district and on what we should pay closer attention to and make sure that we are providing educational opportunities for all students in various ways. And really appreciate the work and look forward to the conversation tonight about what you've done so far. So, Brad?
Thank you very much, Dr. Dixon. Someone's got to let me know how close I need to be to this microphone. I'll do my very best. There's 3 of us up here tonight. My name is Brad Callender. I'm the Director of Career and Technical Education for the Tri-Heights Career Tech Prep Consortium. Say that fast. It's a little difficult, but thank you for having us tonight. I'm here with Bob Swigert. And Bob, your title?
Hello, I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for the district.
Mr. Porter.
Jeff Porter, automotive instructor for the district.
Tonight, we're going to be using some props because I like that. And one of the things that's, I think, really important is to understand that everything that we do is with intention. If you have a plan and you work that plan, you'll get the results you intend. So the things we're looking at tonight for your props is I've got a card in front of you, which these are available anywhere. This is a card that has our strategic plan, highlight our goals 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to touch on all 5 of those. Now, Career Tech sort of ties all these things together because, again, it comes back down to intention. So as I'm talking about the goals, refer to your cards if you like. Also, there's a manila folder in front of you. You don't need to get it out now because it's some light reading, including the entire strategic plan for Career Tech and also the Career Tech offerings for next year and some expansion thoughts. And we'll get to those in a little bit. Tonight I'd like to talk specifically about what career technical education looks like in the district. And we've been having some technical difficulties. Actually, Google has been having some technical difficulties, not us. And so we'll see how that works out as we move on down the road. But if we do, we'll just take a deep breath and we'll realize that even Google is fallible. Right now we have 14 programs in our Tri-Heights Consortium, which consists of Cleveland Heights, University Heights, Shaker Heights, and Warrensville Heights, 3 school districts. Our 14 programs also include FCS, which is Family and Consumer Science. You may have known that as home ec back in the dark ages. And also CBI, which is Career-Based Intervention, which is designed primarily for students in grades 9, 10, and 11. It's designed to teach some employability skills, and it's something that we reinstituted this year that had been part of what we were doing over time, but we really felt there was a need for some of our students. Our current program list includes automotive technology, and you have this list in your packet. It is color-coded if you'd like to look at it. It's a single sheet, but it's automotive technology, audio engineering, business management technologies, career-based intervention, clinical health careers, computer networking, cosmetology, criminal justice, digital video production, engineering technology, exercise science and sports medicine, firefighting EMT, graphic imaging technology, marketing, pharmacy tech, vocational work experience, and some middle school CTE. Now, why did I bother to read all of those to you? Because as we move through the evening, you're going to see that there's a lot of opportunities for kids, and that's just a real brief snapshot. And within each one of those particular programs, each student has the opportunity to grow and develop and go down several varied career pathways. And that's the idea here, to keep those things in your mind, to keep them out in front. Currently, 21% of the students that are in Heights High School are involved in career tech, and that is a pathway or a program. That's up 2% over the previous 2 years. Now, we're talking percentages rather than raw numbers because percentages are really where it matters. Because even with the differences in enrollment from year to year, if you look at the percentages, that's where you can truly track growth. Our other two schools actually have grown a little bit as well. We've got Shaker is up 22% over last year in participation, and Warrensville 31%. Actually, 73% of the students attending Heights High School will take a career technical education class at some point during 4 years because it includes family and consumer science classes. It includes some other electives that we don't normally think of as CTE, but those are CTE funded programs. So 73% of students do attend some CTE class along the way. Goal number one, if you refer to your card, goal number one, student outcomes, expectations, proficiency, and mastery. Goal number one on the strategic plan. Now, to make certain that we were all pulling in the same direction, because there's nothing worse than being in a canoe when everyone's paddling the wrong way or paddling their own way, you sort of spin in circles. We decided that as we sat down and looked at the strategic plan, what could we do with career tech that would line up with that? And thanks to the phenomenal work that was done by the CTE working group, as well represented tonight, thank you very much, who is faithful to meet every month to discuss career tech. And if anyone's invited, if you'd like to be added to the mailing list, you can see Malia back there. Malia, you want to put your hand up real quick? We'll add you to the mailing list. Lots of cool stuff goes out on there. And they continue to be advocates for what we do in career and technical education. So we started with a plan, a strategic plan that would take us to where we needed to go. And this is actually included in your packet, your little manila folder there, the full plan itself. It aligns with not only our strategic plan, but also with the compliance that the state of Ohio is requiring us to do. So each one of those areas that we've outlined also lines up with a goal. You could take the time to read those. They gave me this lovely laser pointer. I might as well use it. See the goal 5 and goal 3 and goal 2. Those are strategic plan goals. As we look at the facilities, community relations, planning and evaluation, quality educators, curriculum, and student access. These are all state goals, state outcomes, quality goals, but they align perfectly with what we're doing in this district. So it allows us, again, to all pull together for all of our students. Our graduation rate for career tech. Currently, four-year graduation rate is 98.1%. That's a phenomenal number. And as we look at the planning and look at one of the things that we talked about with the strategic plan, that was to get that graduation rate up. So if a student has taken one career tech class and has become a concentrator after that first year, they have a 98% chance of graduating on time. That's a phenomenal number. That's a number we can be proud of. Our next goal, by the way, is 100%, in case anyone was wondering, because that is a doable number. We're close, and we're all pulling together. This number is reflected on our district report card as well, as it weighs in as part of that total graduation rate. Bob's going to jump in here every now and then because he knows something better than I do.
So one of the things that we wanted to look at from the core instructional program that we offer here in Cleveland Heights is how do we align our CTE programs to just a high school diploma? What does that look like? The state has spent some time realigning and creating new opportunities for us to know what paths to graduation entail. And currently, this is for the class of 2018, is there are 3 pathways to graduation. One is that you earn an industry-recognized credential. The second is you earn a remediation-free score on the SAT or ACT, or you can earn an honors diploma from the state of Ohio. So all of those are the 3 pathways in order to receive a high school diploma from the state of Ohio. Now, there's some other ways that we can, Brad talked about our rating from the report card, and there are some ways that we can earn bonus points, like taking AP courses or an IB diploma. But essentially, those 3 that we just talked about, the industry-recognized credential, the remediation-free score on the SAT, and the honors diploma are really the 3 ways that students are going to access a graduation or diploma from the high school. So in aligning to that, we see that there's a lot of opportunity to offer more CTE programming for students in the district. We want to get more students involved, and just based on what Brad just said, around 98% of CTE students graduating, why wouldn't we want more students from our general population to be accessing those courses? How do we keep them engaged throughout the high school process and really keep them moving towards earning a diploma from the state of Ohio?
Tied to that is the industry credentials piece, which the Ohio Department of Education's website has a significant piece on it about the industry credentials that are available. Students can earn these even as a senior if that's the pathway they're looking at. And for example, if you go to the ODE website, look under industry recognized credentials under topics, and you will find a whole list of things for each one of the career clusters. We'll look at information technology because that's one that has a whole bunch of opportunities. Again, the opportunity to earn 12 points, that is what we're looking for. And if you look at some of these exams that our students are eligible to take at this point when they complete computer networking, for example, a Cisco Certified Networking Associate, that's a 12-point test, which means that when they leave, they need to be able to go out and do these things. And this is a piece of paper that says, yes, you're qualified to do this. And the state of Ohio is going to recognize that as such.
Can I ask you a question, just so I'm following here? So yeah, the state's changing, how they measure graduation, and to be sort of state approved, like child is graduating. We know we have lots of students in our district, for whatever reason, they don't look at college as an option, so they don't look at the SAT or the ACT as an option. So what I think I'm hearing, and I'm looking to validate this, if someone feels like they can get into a CTE class, it sort of helps all of us. It helps push our graduation rates up, but it's also a great alternative for a student in our district to actually get a badge next to their name by being Cisco certified or whatever it may be. Is that really what's being conveyed?
That's correct. In fact, as you know, in the IT world, that certifications mean more than degrees. What your ticket is, and that means a lot more than what a degree is. And so that is an opportunity. Again, it's about empowerment and being able to take control of your own destiny to a certain extent. So absolutely, yes, sir.
And there's, I think, some conversation that, as I sat at this table probably 5 years ago, it was college or career, right? And I think that the language has changed to say, why would we not say college and career? That I can access a job right now, I can access college right now. The order in which I have, as an individual, choose to pursue those paths is really up to me. So for students to graduate high school, have a diploma that says you are ready and you will have success in college, or you have a certification and can be employed right now. I think that those are both very dynamic things that we want our students to be able to leave our high school having both of those.
Absolutely. Some of the challenges and the supports we have for Goal 1 right now are we want to improve our technical skill attainment score. That score in of itself is reflective of what's called web exam, which is designed, which think of it as end-of-course tests for career tech courses. It doesn't necessarily align with the industry standards. But what it does do is test the new course structure. And we do want to see our scores improve. They were not where they wanted to be. They were an F rating. If I'm going to share the A, I'm going to share the F. We need to improve that. We've taken some very specific steps, including getting the teachers familiar with how the test structure, the new test structure, with being able to participate in the question, on item writing, and also being able to see the new tests. So we've got a very specific and directed program to address that obvious deficiency. The second one I'll just touch on briefly. Overcome perceptions, and I think Bob already handled that quite well, in that there's a bit of perception that Career Tech is just the old vocational education program. It's shop class. It's more than that, and we'll leave it at that for now because you're going to see that for yourself. Finalizing our pathways.
So as we're thinking about creating this coherent pathway, we really are looking at, this is not a program students can enter into in 11th grade. Our traditional path would say 9th and 10th, you go through your traditional core. 11th grade, you move into a CTE program for year 1. 12th grade, you have CTE program year number 2, and then you earn your credential. One of the things as we're looking at aligning is the state has said, why are we waiting so long in order to gain exposure to CTE programming? What does it look like for us to get CTE programming into the middle school with even 7th and 8th graders taking primer courses to say, is this something I want to commit 2 years of my life by the time I'm a junior in order to really pursue that industry recognized credential? So we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how do we include more opportunities for our middle school and our 9th and 10th grade students to access career technical education programming. It might not be a full 2-year program, but I might take semester electives, or I might be on a rotation to have some exposure and some experience. And this is one of the things that, as we're thinking about moving forward and offering and changing some programming at the high school and middle school level, how do we build that exposure into the programming that we're offering at both middle school and high school? Do you want me to talk a little bit about some of the challenges? Some of the challenges obviously include, how do we have highly qualified staff that can offer some of these introductory courses? How can we make sure that we can spread that without necessarily taxing the current CTE teachers? Because they're obviously concentrating on the 11th and 12th grade programs, and there's not a whole lot of time in their day to increase that capacity to offer some introductory courses. We have been able to find it in some of the teachers' schedules where they can offer an intro course. I think one of the ones that comes to mind right now is we have CPR as a course for high school credit. And we do have one of our CTE courses, teachers teaching that as an elective. That is something in addition to the exercise science program, which could potentially be one of the ways that she could even recruit students into the exercise science program, is through their exposure in the CPR course. So you want to comment on that?
Again, we're working to create an entire pathway that will go from 7th grade on up, using some of the core stuff that's available on ODE's website, and also looking at our own course offerings to tailor those. For example, in the allied health professions, students always took a certain course, but in reflection upon that, the teacher came back and said, you know what, that doesn't quite fit. I would rather they take this thing because it aligns better with what they're doing. And so we're making the adjustment with the guidance counselors to make sure that they get that particular course rather than taking the one that they were going to get instead of that. So we're looking to make the adjustments with each one of our teachers, and also they make the adjustments in their curriculum. Now, the final thing is developing innovative curriculum delivery models. We need to look at other alternatives on how can we get our career tech stuff to our kids. What are our online options? What are the options for shortened or before school or after school options? Look at those models that make sense for a student's schedule. If you have a student, for example, who's got their schedule completely packed with fine arts and with all the things that come along with that, all the schedules and with the rehearsals and those kind of things, but still wants to participate in a career tech program, we should have some opportunities for them to do that, some chances, some opportunities for enrichment, for being able to meet those needs or those goals outside of the regular school day.
Hey, Brad, I mean, you're talking about, our guidance counselors. These resources are really overworked. I mean, they really, I mean, as a former high school parent, I mean, it's hard sometimes to get their attention. I guess what's being done, is there, and maybe this is not something that you can answer right now, but is there a way that, I mean, you could have a separate guidance counselor? I guess I'm kind of curious to see what kind of strategies are being used to, I mean, I know the 12th grade guidance counselor, I mean, they're worried about getting kids to apply quickly to the schools. I mean, that is a huge level of effort. I mean, they are busy, 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 and they're doing a great job. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're doing a good job, they're just busy. But to try to also get them to think about CTE on top of this,
Well, again, part of this is the state has mandated that career counseling begin and career exposure begin all the way down at the kindergarten level, all the way up. And so there's a mandate there. But mandates aside, it makes sense to begin looking at these things and to be able to parse your time in such a way. And part of my job and part of Bob's job and the teachers themselves is to say, okay, here's the things that we can do. Here's what we can give you resource-wise to the school counselors that will enable you to better do your job and better understand it. A lot of school counselors in traditional high schools don't understand the role of career and technical education. And a big part of it has been educating educating them that there's a piece beyond just vocational education. They don't just go to auto tech, but most of them will go on to something beyond that. And so it's not really an end in high school, but a beginning. And to get them the resources they need, it is a challenge and is creative, and I'll talk on that specifically a little bit later when we talk about the team-based approach, but we are addressing that need, and it's being addressed at a couple different levels because, again, there's just a lot of demands on everyone's time right now.
Right. And I'd like to add to that, so he does have a guidance counselor that works directly with CTE. And fortunately, Bob supervises all the guidance counselors. So Bob is working with the guidance counselors around this, but it is just kind of redesigning their work. But he does have a guidance counselor that works with the CTE program.
I do, and she splits time between the 10th, 11th grade and with and career tech, and it's a tough juggling act, and it's tough to keep things moving forward. So, but I do have one. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Just so I can kind of piggyback on what does this look like, we are really working at the elementary to try and figure out what does it look like to have early exposure. So when our elementary counselors meet together, a lot of it is around how are we bringing in guest speakers, how are we trying to provide some enrichment opportunities, how are we showcasing some career choices that students have. So that's one of the way about early exposure. As we move middle through high school, one of the documents that you're probably familiar with is a student success plan, which the state has asked that we start working with all of our students to have a success plan. So we do a little bit of planning on the front end, and that is really what we're saying. We do planning on the front end, and so we don't have to modify as much. So if I show that I'm interested and I have some early exposures in 8th and 9th grade, my counselor starts scheduling me for those courses in 11th and 12th grade right there. Now, obviously, if my needs change as a student, it's a lot easier to go in and modify the 4-year plan than it is to create a whole new 4-year plan. So one of the things that I think that we have been missing, and I think our guidance counselors would agree, is every year we meet with students, it's kind of like, well, what do you want to do this year? And instead we want that more long-term plan that says, last year you told me that you wanted to do this, which, is why we put you in chemistry, it's why we put you in this career tech program, it's why you took this elective. Has any of that changed? And then we can modify their plan. So I think that we're trying to become more predictive in our process through those early exposures to CTE programming as well.
Recently, we completed, and we're on goal number 2 now, by the way, which is educational approach, equity, empowerment, and opportunities, which is going to be a reoccurring theme throughout this as well. The alignment of a program to courses, and I'm going to ask Mr. Porter to speak to this from a real-life perspective from a teacher. At one time, we had Auto Tech 1 and Auto Tech 2. You took Auto Tech 1 as a junior, and you took Auto Tech 2 as a senior, but the world has changed a little bit.
So our courses now have gone from, like Brad said, from Auto Tech 1 and 2 to now we're aligning with the state, And our courses now are by semester. Semester 1 is general maintenance, semester 2 brake and suspension, semester 3 electrical electronics, and system 4 being engine performance. And as I told my students this morning, it progressively gets harder as we go through the curriculum. And it aligns with what colleges are doing. Most people today don't want somebody working on their brand new car. They're requiring a degree, at least an associate's degree, if not a 4-year degree. Dealerships are sponsoring kids to go to college, and to piggyback on some of the statements that you had made, is that students are coming into auto tech, and what I'm finding is that once they find out the opportunity is available, students that didn't see themselves going to college are now finding themselves in college programs because of the way our courses align. And I'm talking about with Tri-C Western Campus. I was just there all day yesterday for an automotive update. They have an outstanding program. Stark State, State College, my kids can leave my program and get into a Toyota T10 program and complete a 2-year associate's degree for under $10,000 because they're sponsored 8 weeks by a dealership, 8 weeks going to school. And that 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, that 8 weeks of work study at the dealership, they're not only getting paid to do that, but they're getting credit towards their degree. So they can finish a 2-year degree for under $10,000 and end up being a junior if they want to move to a 4-year college. So now it opens up a whole new pathway that our kids can go to, that kids that maybe didn't see themselves going to college, or that wasn't their family's, way of doing things. Now they come into automotive and they don't think of it as, I'm really going to a college. They think they're going, and it's what they're passionate about, what I'm passionate about. So my kids end up taking that pathway and get into the GM ASEP programs, the Honda PAC programs, and the Toyota T10 programs.
And again, that's reflective of the next point, which is adapting to changing workforce needs. The teachers spend a good deal of time talking to the industry, finding out what they need to know. What's the new, latest and greatest, not just the latest and greatest toys, but latest and greatest skill sets they need to take away to be successful in that particular industry. We want to make certain that we expand opportunities to all of our students, and that includes students that are normally overlooked for career tech, students who normally are not the focus of career tech marketing efforts. On one end, we have an opportunity next year through the efforts of Dr. Johnston to work with Cleveland Clinic and Project Search. Project Search is a program, it's a transition program designed to take students with developmental disabilities and transition them to the world of work. We're very excited about, I believe we have 3 slots available, and as we continue to grow as a consortium, we're looking to expand into more of a local market as well. And that was, CMSD was helpful in allowing us to have 3 of their slots to pilot this out. And on the other end of things, we have Project Lead the Way, for example, where it's an opportunity for students who may not have considered career technical education to take a career tech class as an elective, to enter that program or that pathway anywhere along the 4-year continuum. You could take it as a 2-year program, a 3-year program, a 4-year program. If you want to take IED, if you want to take Principles of Engineering, just one of those pieces, you can do that. That's fine, especially as it works through your schedule. That's why that's one of our only programs that's available 4 years with 4 different courses and multiple opportunities throughout that. Because again, it's to try and touch both ends of the spectrum. That doesn't mean that we leave the middle out, because everyone has an opportunity to get something from career tech. And again, I talked a little bit about family and consumer sciences. There's nothing more important than learning to cook and take care of yourself, all right? That's something that we tend to take for granted. We've taken everything else out of the curriculum to a certain extent that has practical application. Let's let them learn to cook. And if you have a chance, go into the FCS labs and see the teachers teaching. It's great. I like it because it's free food. So it's a great opportunity. We've expanded, Bob talked a little bit about expanding our middle school and introductory coursework, and that's some of the things we're very proud of as far as making sure the kids have exposure to something a little bit earlier on, and we're working with our middle school teams to look at what other opportunities are there available besides right now Project Lead the Way. What are the other pieces that we can put in, and to make certain that it makes sense within our IB focus. It's got to make sense with everything else we're doing. Again, remember the statement I made about all pulling in the same direction. We've got to make sure it's not out by itself, but it makes sense for our students, makes sense for the district, makes sense for our community, makes sense for our state. We've got to make sure that we are all pulling in that same direction. Some of the challenges the schedule. We only have so many hours in the day, and it's tough sometimes for a kid who wants to take everything, which is part of that creative scheduling piece. And one of the things I really have liked is that this year that the Ed Services team and the high school staff and members of the high school staff are looking at the schedule as a whole, looking at the entire thing, looking at how we schedule students, the prerequisites, the way things go together, the actual time they spend in class, to make certain that everyone gets a fair understanding of opportunity. Again, coming back to opportunity. College and career planning. Bob touched on this earlier, and I'm going to have Bob give a quick one word, and so, because it's not because I want to hurry Bob along, but I've already realized how far in we are to this. We're only on goal number 2, and I did say that I would try to be brief tonight. But we have a tool available to us. Bob.
It's called Naviance.
Naviance. How many of you know what Naviance is? Anyone on the board know what Naviance is? It's been used primarily for college transcripts. It's college transcripts, those kind of things. And Bob was sort of instrumental in bringing this in, but it's so much more than that. And we're beginning to just explore. There's a career planning tool on there. We can use it all the way down to 6th grade. There's all kinds of resources for families and for kids to learn about predicting where they want to go and the opportunities in front of them. So that's going to begin to continue to roll out, and that's been really well received by the Ed Services team and by everyone who's been involved in this point.
Brad?
Yes.
On Project Lead the Way, didn't the state fund some Project Lead the Way at some point, and that was separate from Career Tech, I think?
Yeah, there were grants available. There's some grant money initially available for that program.
Do we have any now?
No, we've used it.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some left, and we did go through that, and we updated Mr. Nachman's his lab and a few of the things he needed with that money itself. And again, I hit it again, perceptions and misconceptions. One person at a time. I like to tell this story because she's sitting in the audience in the front row. Our second presenter tonight is going to talk a little bit about gifted, but she needed air in one of her tires, and she came down to Mr. Porter's lab, and Mr. Porter is a zealot about career tech. Can you tell that? Mm-hmm. I would tell you all my teachers are, all right? They all are. But he got to speak with her, Ms. Robinson, about career tech, and she said, wow, this is an amazing thing. I didn't even know all that you do here. Am I right so far? You nodding? And so that, that right there, just that one-on-one, that energy that comes out from the kids. If you ask any kid what they do in their life, they're excited to tell you. They're great. So if someone takes a moment and says, hey, let's talk about career tech, take a minute and listen to them, especially if it's a kid. So as we get out and we begin to move things, it's one person at a time, just overcoming some of the perceptions left over from woodshop. Nothing wrong with woodshop. I still have all my fingers. Goal number 3. Now this is where Mr. Porter is going to shine tonight. Parent and community engagement, partnerships, and communication. Now one of the things I really want to go back to what Mr. Posh asked earlier about the guidance counselors, this team-based approach. I could not conceivably do all that I have to do in a year without everyone's support, without Ed Services support, without Bob, without Ms. Gould, without Dr. Dixon, without all of our curriculum specialists, without our technology people who get stuff set up for the labs, without the teachers, without all of everyone pulling together. And you think about things being siloed and separate, but right now, when I go meet with the school counselors, and I do that on a regular basis, they know why I'm coming, they know what we're going to talk about, they have things ready, they have questions ready, and they have solutions and suggestions for schedules, for kids, and I think back to Mr. Porter, we had a kid last year who was not going to graduate, and typically what they would do is they'd remove the kid from career tech because he already had enough credits, but he needed to get his core credits in. But Mr. Porter, myself, and the guidance counselor said, you know what, let's leave him in. This is motivational for him, but we'll just let him use some of that time during his career tech time to work on the computer in the lab to get caught up on things. He got everything done, and he graduated. Okay, so there was creative solution and everyone working together. So, this is about, again, pulling together for the right reasons, at the right time. And I can't say enough about the team that I have the opportunity to be part of. Communication is top to bottom. I mean, I'm excited that as we move forward, that's going to be something that we see even more of as we move down to the middle school and even to the elementary school part of it. Everyone, again, working together. And I think the IB strand that's woven through it is going to be tremendously important. Mr. Porter, can you talk about partnerships?
Partnerships. I've already touched on the motor cars, Honda, Toyota, GM. Those are partnerships that we've been working on, and I don't know how many of you remember from last year, I had a young man that couldn't make it to the night he was being honored because he was working at GM, and he's involved with the GM ASEP program, which is through Tri-C, and he's working at Tim Lally. So we're working on the partnerships with Tim Lally, Motor Cars, Toyota, Honda, which are right here in our neighborhoods, and Honda, I met with them over the winter break. They are willing to hire as many of my kids that I can put out for employment, meaning they are willing to take on, they said if I had 14 kids right now in my senior class, they would all go out on work release that would be eligible to go. The automotive industry has changed so much. They are in dire need of people to service vehicles. The service industry has changed, and these partnerships and sending the kids to Stark State and Tri-C, these are all crucial pathways that these kids need to go into to get employment in these type of dealerships, and dealerships are where it's at. I mean, independent garages are great. Usually they employ 2 or 3 people. Dealerships like Tim Lally, I went there on one of the professional days as a site visit, and it is like a city over there. I don't know how many of you have seen the one on Richmond, but it is a huge facility, and they're all going that way. And so during that time of developing the partnerships, I've got Ford calling me, and that's why I wore my Ford shirt tonight. That's where I came from. I'm the type of person, I don't forget where I came from and how I got to where I'm at, because Ford is what got me where I was at. 15 years at Ford. I was that student that came through school not seeing myself going to college. And automotive, I went to University of Northwestern in Lime, Ohio, and all my credits transferred to Kent State. And as I transitioned from industry into teaching and worked on my teaching degree, which at that point, so when I talk about students that don't see themselves going to college, I can help change those kids, and I give them those opportunities, and I make it reachable that they can grab that and go to school. The other partnerships that we are dealing with, aside from our kids, is bringing in industry people. We have a training seminar set up March 1st. Having the industry connections. I have a guy flying in from Florida, from Continental Tires. The company's flying him in. No expense to the district. I'm sure everybody would like that. So the company is paying for him to fly in. He is going to do a training seminar during the day that our students will get certified or a certificate for 1-hour training on tire pressure monitor systems, which is mandated by the government. He's also going to do an evening seminar for all of our local garages and shops and dealerships around the area, which is going to bring in people and have them see. And my students, I've invited all my students to stay that evening and have the chance to shake hands, make those connections, because that's what gets people from point A to point B, is having the connections and seeing that. So that's a big thing. I will get the flyers out. I want to make sure everybody knows, even if you don't want to come for the whole time, I realize not everybody's in the cars like we are, but maybe just stop and see what's going on. To me, it'll be an exciting evening. On Friday, instead of the professional day, my day was spent at Tri-C. Greater Cleveland Dealers Association did a competition, and there was probably 100 students from all over Northeast Ohio that competed. We took students there to compete in the test. It was a 200-question test. Nobody has received the results yet. Once we do, there will be 5 teams that will go to the car dealership show, or the new car show, I'm sorry, in February to compete in a hands-on competition. They're giving away a $5,000 down to $1,000 scholarship for the 5 teams, obviously 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and those hands-ons. And so the students that went and took the test, this is our first year having the opportunity to compete. Thank you, Brad. Our students, the students that did go and take the written test, are going to return to the car show Hopefully, I get to tell you guys they're going to go compete. I haven't got that yet. If we're not going to compete, we're going to go observe the competition, because these are great opportunities for our kids, and it introduces them to this whole world of automotive that they see. Sorry, I'll shorten this up, Brad. This morning started the semester, so my students sometimes, when we start out, I like to think I got a good rapport with my students, but when I get that new group in as juniors, sometimes they're unsettled. They've never been in a program like this, and developing these pathways to start exposing them to it in elementary and junior high, and as they come into high school, they'll start seeing what's available to them. But my junior class, a little bit of a struggle in the beginning. They finally settled down. They thought I was unrealistic with the standard. I treat my students like I want my own two sons treated. I set high standards for them. I help them work up to those standards. So today I said we're going to do a little reflection on semester 1. What could you do different, and set some goals for semester 2. So I have a little PowerPoint, a couple cartoons, kids laugh a little bit, and then they took it serious and they started writing. So we went around, we shared out, and I shared with Brad today what the biggest goal that a student set and the biggest thing that they could change about semester 1. First of all, they set goals that they want to be exempted from the final, because 2 of the juniors were exempted for having A's. So the rest of the class wants to be exempted. And so they pulled together as a team that they want to do that. So I thought that was a huge goal, to say, I don't really care about my grades, to I want to work to be exempted, and all that means they're going to have an A in the class. The second thing they told me, over half the class said if they could change one thing, they would have trusted me more in the beginning, because as I bring these people in, and as Toyota comes in, and as the Honda managers come in, and all these opportunities, and they see all these doors opening up to them, and they see all the kids going to the competitions, they realize that I'm there and I care about them. And when I say this about my program, or the school district's program as Autotech, I think I'm really talking on behalf of all of the CTE teachers, that we care about these kids, and we're trying to open doors for these kids to walk through. And when they see the opportunities that are available that maybe wouldn't have been available for them any other way, they have goals. They're looking beyond high school. They're seeing where they're going to be at in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. And so setting those goals with my kids today, the first day of the semester, to me was more important than anything else I think I could have done with my kids, because having them reflect on what they did, but going forward, I think those kids, they see the opportunities.
Absolutely, and I think that ties in well to the next point, which is those post-secondary connections. We're required to have articulation agreements in place for every one of our programs, which means the opportunity to earn college credits while you're in high school. And we do have all those in place. The last round of them, I will have them completed by Friday. And we're looking at not only our traditional partners, but looking at expanding some of our partnerships into a little further south, Kent State, and a few other areas that have programs that are not necessarily offered up north. And as we begin to develop these partnerships, again, it looks like an opportunity to spread our wings, but what it does is it gives our students a little wider reach. And if they have opportunities a little bit further south, east, west, get a little wet north, but other than that, it's about getting them a jump start, and that's what we do with all of our programs. Employability skills. I want you to notice employability skills is in 2 places, accomplishments and also on challenges. When employers do come in, that's one of the first things they say, give us employability skills, teach them the basics. We'll teach them the specifics they need, teach them the basics. And that is actually strand 1 of every single course in all of the CTE courses, employability. And as much as we continue to focus on that, we have Michelle Phelps, who works with them on resume writing and practice interviewing skills. I know the CBI teacher, Ms. Spalding, was even having her kids interview the first quarter, practice interviews to get ready to go out and interview for jobs, which is part of what CBI does for students, is to help them get employment and learn those employability skills. But look at those things. But as far as we've come, we find that there's still some rough edges that need to be worked off. And we often refer to these as soft skills. They're not soft skills. They're essential skills. The ability to communicate, look somebody in the eye when you're talking to them, firm handshake, know how to write a decent letter, to be able to write a resume, to be able to present yourself well, and and walk with authority. Those are some of the things that you learn as you feel confident in yourself. Now, I actually want to mention something real quick, an anecdote real quick. I've got one of my other teachers here, Ms. Ballou, back here, and she's not aware that I'm really going to share this, but I was in watching a lesson she was teaching one day, and it was one of the most phenomenal employability skills moments I've ever seen. She had her students in a circle, and they were doing a patient care circle. And they were each playing different roles. And it was phenomenal to see the difference in not ability level, but a maturity level. Because you could easily see which students were understanding this was a kind of a serious thing. This is something that they would have to do as a professional, and others were kind of just laughing it off. But by the time those students end up graduating, they would all be at the same level of maturity in that class, because she takes the time to teach them that employability. And it may not be the most cohesive lesson on the planet because it's somewhat chaotic because of what it is. But it teaches them a skill that they're not going to get anywhere else. And so it teaches them to be able to empathize and to be able to process information, to know that they're part of a whole of an organization, to get this patient care plan developed. So there's things that come out of what we do every single day. There's Commander Lemons has his kids punch in every day on time, and if they're not on time, there's a penalty for not being on time. There's responsibility to adhere to being on time. That's something really simple. Show up on time, prepared to work. We work on that in Career Tech. That's one of our primary focuses. Another challenge is that comprehensive K-12 career exposure. Again, finding time, finding the moments, finding the time. And I know the elementary teachers, one of the things that really helped this summer was that when we had our principals meetings with Dr. Fran, I got to meet a lot of the elementary principals in a different setting, and got to be able to work out some relationships, some opportunities to go out to their buildings, the elementary schools, and be able to share what we do in Career Tech. And in fact, I'm going to be going to the middle school, to Rocks, to present on the 27th to all of the 8th graders to just talk about Career Tech and what it's about, and basically take a couple kids with me and have a good time just sharing with them. So it's opened some doors, but as we begin to walk down this road, we need to get more structured in how we do it. We need to look for opportunities and be intentional about it if we're going to begin to see the rewards of that. And likewise, a family-centered college and career planning, which means we do things when it's family-friendly. We do things after hours. We have career opportunities, career nights, not just career days, career nights, where we have employers come from the area talk about what it means to work for X, Y, and Z company, or maybe a STEM focus, or look at manufacturing in this area, look at those different types of roles and jobs, as well as the college fair, which is phenomenal, by the way. Michelle Phelps does a great job on that, but adding a career component to that particular piece as well. Goal number 4. Goal 4, valued professionals and a culture of excellence, caring, quality, diverse, collaborative. This is a great place to work. It really is. We have some of the best professionals I've ever seen anywhere. I look at any one of my Career Tech teachers, and I would they could go back into industry tomorrow and knock it out of the park. They could choose to leave education and go right back to doing what they were doing before. And part of that is because we've been intentional about how we hire and the process HR goes through to vet and to make sure that when they say, Brad, what do you need? I say, I need this, this, and this position filled. That's what I get. I don't get some sort of hand-me-downs. I get the best. And we keep doing that, and we're going to continue to make progress. As we recruit people, as we begin to develop our talent, one of my favorite talent development stories is Cynthia Booker. Cynthia was on radio and television and film. We actually talk a little bit about radio every now and then. And she was in the Cleveland area. I mean, she's got her picture on the newspaper and the stuff. She was a pretty big deal locally. She also worked for communications. She did all the film editing, all of those kind of things. And one day, I discovered I had a need for a digital video production teacher. And I walked by her office, which is down there. It's where Mr. Wortman's office is now. I walked in and said, hey, what do you think about teaching? And she said, I don't know. And through the efforts of Dr. Lombardo and Dr. Dixon, we were able to make that happen, and she is phenomenal. Her kids were at the Cleveland Film Festival Independent Film Festival last year. We had several shorts shown. I mean, she is in her element doing this. And if we had not taken the risk to develop our own, that program would probably not exist. I would have probably said, we don't need this. But she has stepped up, and she's someone from within to make it happen. Challenges and support, obviously staffing. We talked a little bit about earlier, Mr. Posh alluded to it. Everybody has a full plate. One of my favorite quotes, Alice in Wonderland, which is Through the Looking Glass, one of my favorite books. Alice and the Queen are running on treadmills. And Alice says, I'm running as fast as I can. I can't get anywhere. And the Queen says, you want to get somewhere? You have to run twice as fast as you can. And sometimes we do, to get somewhere. So as we begin to work harder and work smarter, we're going to see, again, greater results. And finally, goal number 5. Our accomplishments. First of all, one of the biggest ones. To the community, thank you. You focused on career technical education. You said that will be an integral part of that high school. You didn't look at it as a bolt-on or a cast-out. You didn't try to stick it in an outhouse out on the corner. You said it's going to be woven throughout the building. To the Board of Education, thank you for having that vision to integrate that to provide additional opportunities for our students. The teachers themselves are working on 3 to 5 year plans for capital improvements. It's expensive to run career tech programs. And so we don't have any surprises for Mr. Gaynor. We're planning. We're planning for what we need in the future, for what it costs to replace the lift when it goes bad, when it's no longer serviceable, to buy new cars, to buy state-of-the-art beds, to buy the digital video production equipment we need. We're planning to be able to do that. And that's a slow process. That's something that takes time, because you have to look at some historical data, look at where you need to go. But I will tell you this, these teachers have done more with less than any group I've ever seen. They've done great things. You know, Mr. Porter comes and says, yeah, I really think I need this. It costs $11. I said, what? So there's been a commitment, and I have not yet gone to Ms. Gould or Dr. Dixon or Mr. Gaynor or Mr. Reinhardt and said, hey, we need, legitimate need, and been turned down. Have not experienced that. And it's not because we've got money flowing. It's because there's a deliberate commitment to how the funds are spent. Career technical education funding is a little bit different. I won't go into the details of it because of time for tonight, but basically you get a per pupil, and you also get a weighted funding per pupil. It's called tiered funding, but we're weighted because weighted makes more sense to people. Career tech costs more to run a program than it does regular education. You've got a classroom, maybe some laboratory equipment, those kind of things. You go to career tech, you've got lifts, and you've got cars, and you've got tools, and you've got millions of dollars worth of cash outlay, capital outlay rather. It costs more money. So the state says, hey, we'll give you some more money for these programs, which is very important. But the important part is making sure our students are properly coded and properly entered into EMIS. And we have a great EMIS department who does that, who checks and double checks, make sure that we get what we're supposed to get. And so hats off to them as well. There's also federal money available in the form of Perkins. I'd be happy to sit down and talk about Perkins to anyone, but I'm in the interest of time. We get about $266,000 of the Perkins money. And that can be spent only 9 different ways, and they're all career tech. And we do. We've seen the results of that. Project Lead the Way has seen quite a bit in recent years. Firefighters saw a little bit of it this year. And that money is actually part of the consortium pot because we get their funding. Some of the challenges and supports, compliance changes. That which is measured is funded, that which is funded is measured. And we just finished a Perkins audit which required me to submit 200 and some odd pieces of documentation to show that we were in compliance. And these compliance changes are okay, because you know what? If you can't explain what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be doing it. So I'm okay with that. But there are changes that take time and take resources to be able to comply with the rules. Threats to funding. There's always a threat to funding. There's always someone who wants to move money around, doesn't think career technical education is not what it needs to be. It's a waste of money, or it gets too much money. Fortunately, the Perkins reauthorization is coming up, which is the fifth or sixth version of Perkins, which again will provide Perkins funding, federal funding, and that was held up while we were waiting for the election results. And finally, challenges and supports program expansion. That's a good thing to expand your programs, but it's also a challenge because you've got, again, startups usually start small, but they cost money. And you've got to be willing to stay with it in the long run, which means you need to plan in advance, which is partially why that strategic plan, the Career Tech strategic plan, ties back to goal number 5. And it says, here's what we're going to look at when we explore adding a program or adding programs. Pending, and I'm going to say pending. I want to remember that pending, that means not yet. Okay, pending the positive vote by 5 boards of education. We will be a 5-district consortium next year, thanks to the efforts of Dr. Dixon and the other 4 superintendents. The consortium would consist of, again, this is all the boards of education have to agree to accept the MOU. There would be Maple Heights, Bedford Heights, Cleveland Heights, University Heights, Shaker Heights, and Warrensville Heights. 5 districts, which, by the way, would change our landscape a little bit. It means at that point we no longer are going to only be 14 programs. We're going to have 21 unique programs. Unique programs. That's not the total number of programs, because we've got 3 auto tech programs, for example, but 21 unique programs to start out with in 12 different career clusters. That's huge. 12 clusters we're going to cover, and that doesn't include CBI and Family and Consumer Sciences. In your packet, I included a color-coded document that will show you what a student from Cleveland Heights could choose to enroll in if this pending MOU is approved by the appropriate boards of education. So that's where we are. Educators, we're going to double in size, career tech size teachers. And by the way, our teachers, a lot of them have advanced degrees. And I can guarantee you the industry experience they have I'd put them up against anybody. And our student population will double in the consortium. And that's a big deal. And it was, the beauty of it is that they have programs that we don't have, and we have programs that they don't have. And it's, again, comes down to opportunities and options for our kids, all 5 districts' kids. And so, again, thank you, Dr. Dixon, and the other superintendents. We're instrumental in making sure that this thought, this vision became a reality. And I'd like to close with this, and if we want to ask a question after this, I'll be available for questions real quick. This is Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs. I'm going to go back one. This is Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs. How many know who Mike Rowe is? Anyone heard Dirty Jobs? Dirty Jobs? Okay. Mike Rowe is a huge proponent of career and technical education. He's a classically trained opera singer, which means absolutely nothing. He had Dirty Jobs on Discovery Channel, and he's done pretty much every dirty job you can think of. But he started a foundation called Mike Rowe Works, which basically funds students who want to go to technical schools. And he pushes the idea of a skills gap and how we need to overcome that. And this is about 1 minute long. And I appreciate your indulgence.
I've got nothing bad to say about a college education, really. I have one, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And if you have the desire and the money to pay for a 4-year degree, I say go for it. But look, we need to stop promoting higher education at the expense of every other form of learning. It's just crazy. It leads to unintended consequences. And right now we got a big one. It's called a skills gap. And the skills gap is bad news for anybody who's addicted to paved roads or electricity or indoor plumbing. Welders, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, steam fitters, pipe fitters, all across the country, there's shortages in these areas, even with unemployment going through the roof. It's crazy. 50 years ago, those jobs were critical. They still are. The problem is we just don't value them the way we used to. So we don't encourage people to pursue them. We're so focused on getting into the corner office, we forgot how to build a corner office.
Any questions?
I got no.
Yes, sir.
I wrote mine down, same for the end. Because when do we anticipate this new consortium being official?
As soon as the MOU was supposed to be finalized at the end of this week and then submitted to the boards of education for approval, so I suspect February.
Okay, because I was putting together, it looks like right now, I think for basing model, Shaker there's nothing based at Shaker, which is nothing new. And I think they're looking at their schematics on their high school renovation plan, I think part of that has to do, they don't really have the room. If we thought that Heights was a labyrinth before, Shaker Heights High is right up there. Warrensville continues to have the two that they have. It seemed that there was like 4 at Bedford, 4 at Maple and 3 at Bedford, and everything else is with us. Now, this new, what you were sharing us with the new consortium, that's not adding, is that adding anything to the 5 systems, or is it more everything's available to all 5?
Well, and that's a great question. Because we'll use Auto Tech, for example. There are 3 Auto Tech programs. There's one at Maple, one at Bedford, and one here. So a student who was here for an Auto Tech program wouldn't go to Bedford. They would go here. So the list you're seeing is the programs that are different than what we have. So there's actually another 12 programs beyond that we duplicate out.
What I think would be very valuable and useful would be if you could come up with a 1-page graphic that has all the programs and then sort of where they're located at in your clusters, because then maybe, okay,
Like that.
something like that would be, I don't know if that was with their.
No, I did not give that because
Okay.
it would be confusing.
Okay, well, I wouldn't have to make my own then. But, I think if we could, for communications department, I think the ability for us to have that as an easy document to convey would help very much with your marketing of the program.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned that, I just want to make sure I understood correctly. If I'm a student who's not in a specific pathway in CTE, but I want to drop in and take a class, that's a viable option, correct?
It depends on the again, we wouldn't want to take someone out who's going to be a concentrator, which is someone beyond 50%.
Right.
But if there are programs that does fit well with, like the engineering program, for example, and we're going to be adding more of those type of drop-in, drop-outs. I know that Ms. Ballou and I have had quite a few conversations about some of the higher level things about possibly creating pathways and trees, if you will. Their student could drop in and see if they like something. If it's for them, hey, I want to do health, but I really want to go down phlebotomy, that's that kind of thing. So again, that's down the road a ways. I'd say 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked, again, it's a completely apples and oranges, but when I was at Heights, I took their, commercial art, drafting, I think much to the chagrin of our architects probably that I took drafting. But it was enjoyable that I was able to, we didn't have necessarily the concentrations we have now, the pathways, but the ability to take something you're interested in, if it's not a specific segue, that's why I was curious if that was, the ability to do that or not. If the program's changed so much that we can't do that, that's.
Well, I think that one of the other goals in the strategic plan is to make sure that all of our courses align. So as we're thinking about what it is that we are offering, and we know that these graduation requirements exist, so how many of our programs are pointing to CT certification or expanding some of these drop-in, drop-out kind of courses? Not drop-out. It's a poor word choice there, but just kind of like at your survey course. I think that's a great idea, and I think definitely within the scope of what kind of space we might have as we move into the new building, what programs could we offer? Drafting technically is still on our course book. We've offered that. I actually got a chance to visit that drafting classroom when we were still offering it. So those are things that it is possible to, revisit and say, does this align with, our plan for a high school diploma?
Next one, I guess, I think Brad mentioned it, but the don't know if it's competency or we have a lot of kids taking a lot of courses and we have a lot of positive. If memory serves, I think I don't say competency, but I think you may have mentioned that, I remember something before, that while we have the level of kids go through the program, but we may not be hitting the numbers when they complete it.
The concentrators?
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly, yes.
And that's, anyone over 50% is going to be a concentrator. And if they get through the programs and they pass the web exam, then they will. And most of our, again, we're working towards that technical skill attainment piece, which is huge. And they do get through it. And again, we're looking at some of the trend data, and right now it's not where it needs to be. But there's a concerted effort by the teachers, and also for example, we used the web exams for pre-tests this year for SLOs. So that's actually a best practice as far as being able to see the test more than once for a kid.
So what you're saying is there's room for improvement at the end, as I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, until I hit 100% on all those indicators, there's room for improvement.
Okay. And then I guess the last one, I think a couple years back when, I must have been a couple years back because it was a different assistant superintendent doing the report. We got numbers of how many students in which classes. I'd be very interested to see where we are trending the last, especially since you've come on board, I'd be curious to see in the different sections and classes, what our enrollment numbers are, as well as, I'd be curious to see as well, it's probably more of a minor subset, how many of those kids are CHUH versus Shaker and Warrensville.
I have all that data, I can send it to you.
So those are my questions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just like to make a comment to Brad and your team. I think you're doing a phenomenal job. It's just great to see how you have grown the program within the last few years, or really since I've been on the board, the different changes and the collaboration I think is fantastic with the different districts. And I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would echo that. And thanks for the presentation tonight as well. A couple of things that you covered, I just want to make sure I'm sort of hearing correctly. Mr. Posh brought up the workload of counselors. Am I wrong in saying that part of this is also how to focus our counseling staff, or possibly look at how do we change the focus if this is going to be a more integrated system throughout there's CT sort of as a standalone in some people's mind, but it isn't necessarily. So can you help me with that a little bit?
Well, I think that just like what you said is when we thought about CT as something separate at the high school, then you designate a specific counselor to it, and it's almost like it's in its own silo. When you think about the approach now of early exposure through middle school and that long-term planning that counselors are doing every year with students and updating that plan, it becomes an integrated approach.
Right.
So I think that some of it is when we have programs that don't lead to anything, where it's not necessarily going to lead to points for high school diploma. It's not going to lead to an industry-recognized credential. Like, those are the things as we're looking at what courses we're offering. If it's a path to nowhere, like, we really want to be critical about why is it that we're offering this. There's not a lot of time for our students to really think about it. 4 years seems like a long time until that's like, okay, that's only 6 courses a semester and 12 courses a year. So, that's not a lot of time. So I think that when we strip some of that back and we can present to the counselors, here is how we want you to walk students to graduation, starting in 7th and 8th grade. And I think we have been working about with that 4-year plan, and we've got some templates that our counselors, even just today, I saw an email where they're now uploading things to the Infinite Campus tab with a form that's fillable to say, I've met with this student, this is what their plan is, this is why we built the plan, this is when they're going to take courses. We're really trying to become a lot more predictive in knowing what the student needs are and then directing them to a program that's going to be beneficial.
Right, and it almost seems to me, and I don't know, this is just
Sure.
conjecture on my part, but that you'd almost walk back from where the end is. So, and the end to me isn't just graduation. It would be what's, where are you trying to head? And and there's obviously more than one path to it, but I would think that probably entails some potentially significant professional development for our counselors to be able to, to me, it's a different paradigm. So, again, I'm not necessarily looking for you to lay it all out, but I think it sounds like you've got a handle on that.
Well, I think that we're attempting to try and integrate those systems, so
Right.
it doesn't feel like it's this standalone thing. Even when we had a counselors meeting at Delisle, I said, like, how many of you have even been in Mr. Porter's class or space? And they had not.
Right.
So one of the things that we want to do for an upcoming counselors meeting is actually get a chance to get out and see Mr. Porter's class and see, oh, this is what it looks like. This is a lot different. So I think just perception, I know Brad talked a lot about perception's the reality, but when it's student and counselor sitting together in an office, we need to make sure the counselor has a real firm grip on what the reality is for our CTE programs.
Right, and then you talked about fighting some perceptions, and there's a part of me, I definitely understand the segregation of this program, even by the state, by the nation, in itself. But there's a part of me that thinks that maybe that's feeding into that perception. I think there's a pride that goes into the people who are in CTE, but there's also the notion of if you make the sale to the students of here's how this can help you, whether you're going to college or not. And I am not sure I completely think he maybe overreached a little bit the way he talked about it. I think that there's a room for everyone in this. The fact is that even the people who are going to college are looking for a career afterward. So it's not a, that's the next step. So anyway, to me, it almost seems like maybe if you have the CTE offerings as here's part of an overall plan for how you can be successful as a student. So, and I think that's what you're doing. And then the only other question I had for you, I guess it's sort of analogous to AP, if you will. We have a lot of really great resources here for these kids. I mean, I haven't seen them in very many other schools. Is there ever a point where we're over, do they get to their next step if they're not going to industry or to a career right away and they're going to school where they're too far along and they're bored their first year there, or can you place out, in other words, and do we work with the people in those next steps to know what it is we need to be providing them in order for them to be still engaged when they go to the next step after they leave us?
You go ahead.
I know I can speak for my program. I don't think the kids are getting bored. Obviously the lessons that we teach there are preparing them not only for just a career in what the industry slang would be calling turning wrenches and fixing cars. The automotive industry is wide open. I have kids that have gone through and become engineers and gone to design school in my 13 years that I've been here for automotive. The careers that are available, some kids can use it as a resource, like I said, just to, get to the higher education, to move on to other careers. It's a stepping stone for some students, it's a career for others. And so to say that a kid is getting bored in one of the programs, the students obviously, just like all of us in this room, are at different levels, and it's just challenging each of those students and pushing a student beyond where they're at. But
Right. Let me just interrupt you for a minute. I maybe put the focus the wrong way. I didn't mean that they're being bored at this level. I'm more saying how are we working with the next level to be sure that we're giving them the skills they need, so that, and making sure that that level that's going to accept them puts them in the right spot, not puts them in sorry to go to the other, but to English 1 when they've had English 3,
Right.
How are we working with their next step to be sure that the continuum going forward is exciting to them?
The articulation agreements we have in place actually speak directly to that. When a student leaves, for example, Jeff's program, and they've already completed the requirements and they've tested out of whatever that is, then they're not required to take that class again.
I guess that's
A good example would be the firefighting EMT program.
Right.
The second year they spend on the western campus of Tri-C, and they leave with 22 credits and a certificate at that point.
That answers my question. Thanks. I'm sorry I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
ask you.
No, I'm sorry.
No, my fault.
Misunderstood.
My fault.
Thank you.
You're looking can have
Anything else?
You were wound up earlier.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll try to keep them brief. First of all, I think joining forces with two other districts makes us stronger. I mean, you see that with already strong programs like what Mayfield has, and I think it's a numbers issue. I mean, the bigger you are, I think the stronger. Unfortunately, Scott walked, and it's a financial issue, but as you grow the program, you know, when we look at our budgets, we know that about what, in these round numbers, 20% of the monies we get are state, 80% is all local funded with property taxes. I mean, do you get enough extra money from the state to cover a lot of that?
Are you offering more?
Is it equal? I mean, well, yeah, but I mean, the state keeps
no.
on pulling money away from us.
Well, as I said, the tiered funding is designed to address that, as the Perkins. But the key with Perkins is the magic phrase that is to supplement, not supplant. It's designed to augment that. So we do get adequate funding, but it's a challenge to make sure it's spent correctly. And again, when you've got a program with for audio engineering only has physical space for 20 students because of the size of the equipment they have in the lab they're in right now. And because of that, that's a very expensive lab. And so it's a challenge to be able to support that. Again, that's why the 3 and the 5 year planning, to be able to say when there are capital things, that we have a bit of a plan in place so that I don't jump on IT and say, hey, IT, I need X, Y, and Z like tomorrow. They say, you don't have any money for that, for all those new computers you want. So do we have adequate funding? Yes and no. I think as we need to, again, continue to explore that. But the key with, and Dr. Dixon will speak to the specifics of this when the MOU comes about the financial piece of that, but every district's responsible for their own house at that time.
Right. And Shaker will be offering a CTE program as
Yes,
well.
they will.
So not this year,
Right,
but
yeah,
the
this-
following year. So
yes.
everyone is going to have some skin in the game in order to make this viable. And they pay, so they use a portion of their dollars.
But do we just get their state aid, or do we get some local
We get all
money
the
from there?
tiered funding, everything.
Tier fund. Yeah,
We
we
get
show
it.
you that model. Yeah, we get all of that.
I could,
Yeah, oh,
We
okay,
got local money
Yeah,
in it too.
but our local money
yes.
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 Think about
subsidizing other districts' kids? Or do we get enough? I mean, so when we charge tuition for a Shaker student to be in the auto tech program,
Right.
I mean, is that fully funded, or are we taking a piece?
Again, it's reported in EMIS. Based on our current contract now, we get 0.5 FT, which is half a student. So whatever half the foundation payment is, we get that. Plus we get the tiered funding for a tier 1 program, which is $4,600 per kid on top of that. And that has to come from Shaker. And if you look at the line item in the letters that come, it'll say tuition from other districts is the line. And the last one was $92,000.
Okay, yeah, I think it'd be helpful when you present was MAU, MAU,
MOU.
MOU.
MOU, to just have a little bit of a segment on, how some of this is funded. It sounds like you're already planning on doing it.
Actually,
so.
we met with an attorney last week, all 5 superintendents, to kind of go through the contract to make sure that everyone was comfortable with the dollars coming in and going out. And that's explained really well in the contract. So when you get that,
Okay.
to sit with.
I was going to share this because we were short on time, but that's the model essentially just from our latest letter that came from the state. And that comes from the state. That's actually, you can go on OD's website and download it under accountability and funding.
I don't think that was in our packet, but if.
Yeah, that's in your packet. It's at the
in our
very
packet?
back.
Okay. I got
I just didn't go through that slide because I was pressed on time, and I told Ms. Robinson I wouldn't take this long.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
No, it's not
Okay,
at all.
so facilities. I mean, we are having a joint facilities meeting with the Facilities Accountability Committee a week from Thursday. And from my perspective, when we made community commitments of what we were doing with the bond issue, the one little piece that I don't think we did, but I think the decision was right, was to build the auto shop at Delisle. And just saying, because, maybe I'm grandstanding or not, I mean, I think there's people in the community that really, really want all the high school courses, the career tech, to be at the high school. And I think there's good reason for that. But I think when you really looked at the numbers and the cost of the auto shop and the double cost to move it, I mean, I don't know, it's a multi-million-dollar facility. If anybody has ever if you haven't been in there, see it. It's incredible. But I think that the decision was the right decision, to sort of go against the community commitment and having that at Delisle. Just saying, just seeing all the great stuff that comes from but I'm real anxious to see everything else to be put at the high school.
And we still have when we leave Delisle, remember, we're still going to have some space there that's already designated for CTE, so there's a perfect place to expand. I don't give up real estate easily.
So, thank you. I think the last
Thank you.
piece that we can end on is, you remember, if you look at your cards and you would go to that mission statement again, and just reminder that the district, when we approve the strategic plan, we approved the new mission. And the new mission, we were intentional when we stated that we wanted our students to be prepared for college and careers. So again, the district was saying that careers was very important for our students and not only college. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that is in our mission statement. So when we're talking about that, it is threaded throughout the district, from our guidance counselors to everyone, they understand that that is our mission statement, that we're preparing all our students for college, to be successful in college and careers. Thank you, team,
Okay,
for your presentation.
thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
But it's time for your other.
Yes. Okay, we can transition to our gifted. So we have Toya Robinson. Come up, and whoever else is coming with Toya.
You? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You had 5.
Thanks.
Okay. Ron will be right back. You want to start? Or should we? Start? Okay. So next we have Toya Robinson, who is our coordinator of our gifted education program. And she is going to talk to us about the gifted program and Hanover Research. In fall of 2015, we had a conversation with Hanover Research regarding doing some research with the district on a special project. And we asked them to help us with looking at our gifted program and helping us to decide if we needed to revamp our model, our current gifted model. And so they were instrumental in facilitating an approach for us to take, looking at our current program and coming up with some recommended next steps. So Toya took the charge and worked hand in hand with Hanover Research, did the study, the research project, and she can talk about the what we're doing, the project itself, and some of the recommendations that Hanover provided for us. Also, you all have those in your packet. To our audience, we make sure that those documents are uploaded online, so you have access to the recommendations directly from Hanover, and also the research studies that they provided for us throughout this project, and also a copy of the focus group. So all the information regarding this project will be available for people online, on our website. Okay, Toya, and she has her boss sitting next to her for support.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come in here this evening and speak with you about, to be able to update you with what's going on in gifted education. Again, my name is Toya Robinson, and like Dr. Dixon said, my boss, Dr. Johnston, is sitting up here with me for support. So I want to make sure that I answer your questions appropriately, and I hope I go through the information for you so that you can get what you need. The first thing that we'd like to address is our mission statement. It's on the Gifted website, and basically what it says is that we're not just looking at academics, but at the whole child. And we want to make sure that children are learning how to think critically and creatively, and that they are learning how to function with 21st century skills. And as we look at this cartoon, I want you to pay close attention to the animals on the screen. We are not calling our students animals, but I want you to look at, you have different types. And the whole point is to basically look at the needs of the elephant is different than the needs of the goldfish. And the needs of the monkey are different than the needs of the dog. So what we want to focus on is what they do well. And with what they do well, we need people to know that we want everyone to have equal access, but everybody's not the same. And everybody doesn't need the same things in order to grow or to continue to learn. And with that, we want you to know also that when you look at that in terms of a gifted child, gifted children aren't okay on their own. They need support and skills and things taught to them as well. Definition of gifted. Unlike, even though we're under the Office of Exceptional Children, we do not have laws and regulations that many through the federal court system. There is a definition of gifted through the federal law, and it talks about achievement in intellectual and artistic and creativity and also leadership. But then Ohio, where our laws come from for identification and service, it addresses all those areas, but it leaves out the leadership. So we cannot identify for leadership in the state of Ohio. So to know that because each state has different laws and regulations, we are bound by the ones in the Ohio Revised Code for the state of Ohio. Identification. Identification for gifted is mandated. It is required for every district to identify students in the following area. So your first area is superior cognitive, and that's kind of like students being tested or assessed for IQ. The test that we use in order to identify a student in the area of superior cognitive, there's a list on the state of Ohio's website, and it tells you which one you can use and what the scores are for those tests. So it's not something that the district comes up with, it's mandated. Also for gifted, you have specific academic, and those are the areas of reading, math, science, and social studies. And those come from a nationally normed test at the 95th percentile. Sometimes people ask if we can use the Ohio standardized test to identify students as gifted, and we cannot. Again, it has to be a national percentile. And then also for creative thinking, we use the test that we use for the superior cognitive identification, but children have to have a 112 or above. And then we also use a checklist of creative behaviors that is also mandated by the state. And that behavior that checklist asks questions and that the teachers have to fill out, either the gifted teacher or the classroom teacher. They score the student, and they ask questions for creative behaviors like what kind of sense of humor do they have? Are they able to adapt content, or just to take an object and adapt it? And are the children the type that like to take risks? And then visual and performing arts. This also has a required checklist, but students are allowed to do auditions and have portfolios. And we are, again, identifying students in this area. And the last two, creative thinking and visual and performing arts, just 2 years ago, we had not identified students in those areas. Again, it's mandated by the state that we do it, but this district was not doing it, and so we are now. So that's helping. to increase our identification, because a lot of times the creative thinking ends up being, students that end up being identified with creative thinking are students of color, a lot of times. So that's one of the things that I'm glad we've started doing. Assessments. We have a various amount of assessments that we use in this district, and we do it for a reason. And I'll explain that to you. The Terra Nova and the InView is what's called a full grade screen. So we're testing students not only academically, but cognitively as well in grades 2 and 6. And one of the reasons that a full grade screen is important, because when you look at gifted, and you look at best practices and how you can increase equity, if you have kids or parents or families that don't know how to advocate for themselves or don't know that the student, what to do in order for gifted, if you're assessing everybody, you're doing it for them, so everybody has an equal opportunity to be tested. And the new gifted laws that were just voted on last month, that will probably be implemented next year, that's one of the new requirements, that districts have to offer full grade testing in 2 grade levels. And so Cleveland Heights, University Heights is ahead of the game in that, because we were already doing that. And then for NWA MAP, we also do full grade screens for that in grades 3 through 12. It's an assessment that the district was already using. So we were going to take those scores, and it's being used for other purposes. But we use those scores also to identify students. And it's actually worked well, because we had some high school students that were identified as gifted in either reading or math that weren't identified earlier on. And then we have another alternate assessment. There's the NNAT3 and the Raven Progressive Matrices, which the law requires us to have individualized alternative testing for referrals if people ask if their children can be tested. The law does state that you are able to receive testing twice a year. So we specifically pick these assessments because they're nonverbal. They're nonverbal, and they don't carry some of the bias that some of the other assessments do. So we use these on purpose so that we can help with equity and help when we're testing either English language learners or just students of color, so they have the opportunity to not have that bias in the testing for the ones that are verbal. And there'll be some more statistics and some more numbers associated with that in just a few minutes. So here are some of the things, current gifted statistics. So talking about this year, our district enrollment, again, these numbers are fluid and they change for almost daily sometimes. We have 5,085 students in the district. 16% of our population is identified as gifted. With that, we have 770 identified students, K through 12, and 47% of those students that are identified are children of color. Cleveland Heights we only service 43% of students in grades 3 through 7, and out of those students that we identify and serve, 37% are children of color. From 2015 to the present, again, we talked about those nonverbal tests that we're using purposely. We have tested individually 179 students. And actually, as of just this year, this is just January, I can tell you 80 of them were this year. And we're proud to say that 59% of those students are children of color that we've tested with the nonverbal tests. Just a couple of weeks before break, a little boy went up to the teacher, a little 3rd grader, and he told her he wanted to refer himself. He wanted to be tested because he thought he could do what she was teaching in her class. And I believe he's a little 2nd grader. And she said, okay, we have to get it signed by your mom. And he went and took the paper home and brought it back. And he was tested. And the ironic thing was his classroom teacher didn't think he would be identified. She said, oh, he's not going to make it. When they tested the little boy, he came back with a 99 percentile, a superior cog. So he was gifted. He could do it. It's just that it didn't come out in the classroom. So teaching them to be advocates for themselves is a wonderful thing, and he had the strength to go up to her and say he wanted to be tested. Social emotional. One of the things that's interesting about gifted that people usually think about is academics. First and foremost, academics is important, but that's not what we do first. We focus on the social emotional portion of our students. Gifted children have what's called asynchronous development. So some of them, if they have the higher IQs, they may develop academically and intellectually, and maturity-wise, not so much. It's an uneven development. Sometimes, and not all gifted kids, but sometimes they're immature. Sometimes they don't have the social skills, don't know how to make the eye contact, some of the things that Mr. Callender was talking about when he presented. But there's other things that go on with some of the gifted kids as well, and some of those behaviors cause anxiety. They have what's called perfectionism, where they think they have to do everything correct because of people's perception of them. When you talk about one of the theorists, his name is Dabrowski, he talks about overexcitabilities, where there's a certain stimuli in some gifted kids where they overreact or they're extremely sensitive to things. So we have to be careful, because they may not react or respond like some of the other kids. I'll give you examples. September 11th, I was a classroom teacher, and I had a student, and he had the overexcitabilities. And when the towers fell, he started crying because it was his fault. It was his fault because in his mind, he was going to develop this ship, and he had been meaning to work on it more, but he didn't get to it. So because he didn't develop the ship and get the draft ready and do all the things he needed to do, he didn't protect his country enough. And it had upset him that he had to go to counseling for that, and the little boy was in 4th grade. So that's what they're saying with things like overexcitabilities and being more sensitive to some things. And also with Maslow's hierarchy of needs with gifted kids, they may get depressed or anxious, again, because of people's perception of them. And if you have anyone that is having discrimination or poverty or cultural barriers, or they're not even getting the food that they need, it's hard for them and any other child to come to school and learn. So we want to make sure that we're addressing the social and emotional part with our students. In MSSP, in the middle school portion, they have an actual class, but we weren't doing it as much as in the elementary level. So we've started a Mind Up curriculum that you see on there. It's teaching the students mindfulness and how to cope and have strategies and be able to talk to adults without panicking, and just dealing with children that they may be different from, so they know how to relate. And it's working very well, because some of the students are coming into classes and asking for the mindfulness lessons instead of their academic piece. So again, giving students the skills they need to go out and be able to function. Because if they can't function, they can't learn. And this little cartoon shows when we're looking at service. You may have a child that's gifted 24/7, but maybe he's only being serviced for 45 minutes. So what do you do? How do you help support that child the rest of the time? When we look at service, again, service is an unfunded mandate. And if you service in the state of Ohio, you have to follow the rules and regulations that are in the Ohio Revised Code. When Dr. Johnston hired me, the district had some service options that they were using. I think you all call it push-in, that the district was using. And the district came in and did an audit and actually told Cleveland Heights, University Heights, that you weren't allowed to push in. It wasn't following the operating standards that they had. So he had to turn in a corrective action plan and explain to the state how they would do things differently and follow the actual guidelines. And if this were to continue, you can lose funding or teachers. And so we wanted to make sure that we're following the different service options that they give us.
Can you define push-in?
Push-in was when some of the gifted teachers were going into the classroom and teaching with the regular classroom teacher. they might call it co-teaching or collaboration, but what the operating standard says is you can do that for a little bit, but it can't be regularly scheduled. So if it was on a schedule that they were going in and pushing in Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for 45 minutes, that was going against the operating standards. Service in elementary. One thing that's also important, as we said, because we have different children and different needs, the state says you need to offer a continuum of services. You don't just offer one service because one service doesn't fit all. So in the elementary, there's a couple of things we do. We have resource room pullout. Again, these are the services offered through the state. And that means that a gifted teacher can work with 15 students at a time. And that these are students in grades 3 through 5. But the requirement is that gifted teacher has to work with the students 225 minutes per week in whatever area they're identified in. And for the gifted teacher, their requirement is 225 minutes per day. And so I'll give you an example. If, say, the young man in the middle, if he's identified in reading, he has to be serviced 225 minutes per week. But then if he's identified in math, he needs another 225 minutes per week. And if he's identified in superior cog, then the state says we have to service him in reading and math. So although the students are receiving service and they enjoy it, that's pulling them out of the classroom. So because of the minute requirement. When there wasn't a minute requirement and you could see them for a shorter period of time, you could see more students in more academic areas.
Are teachers licensed specifically in gifted?
Yes, that is the requirement. They have a regular classroom certification, and then it's an additional 2.5 years more for the gifted license. So we have the resource room pullout, and then we have self-contained. That again is a teacher that has the students full-time for all subject areas. They don't have the 225-minute requirement because the students are with them all day long. We had that in grades 4 and 5. When I came here, the district chose to offer it only in the areas of superior cog reading and math. So we opened it up because when I first got here, the classrooms were small. Some of the gifted self-contained classrooms only had 6 or 7 kids in them. And so the state also agreed that we were limiting students to be exposed to self-contained classrooms. So now we have a system where the kids in the self-contained can be identified in any area. And it's allowing us to service more kids in that realm. The classrooms are limited to 20. In Cleveland Heights, that sounds a little large, but in most districts, their classroom size is like 35, 36. So the 20 students look small. But here, because some of the classrooms are smaller, they're like, why are there so many kids in that one class? Well, that's the reason, because the state has limited it to 20.
Are the self-contained, I remember we had the self-contained at certain
In
buildings?
certain buildings,
Which
yes.
are those, which buildings?
It's Boulevard,
Okay.
it's Fairfax,
Okay.
and it's Rocks.
Okay.
But it's open up to all children in the district. It's not just limited to the children in those buildings.
Canterbury on that list too, or no?
No, they are not.
Because always, I was looking at your numbers, and I saw some buildings had real high and some were relatively low. So
Because
that's- okay.
they're in feeders right now,
okay.
so
Gotcha.
that's how they're.
That answers the
filled.
question I was gonna pose.
Self-contained, because we only have them in certain places, that means students who are tested can be transferred, can get a transfer to these other schools?
But their scores go back to their building. So their state test scores.
So do we have any sense of how many students are at their home school versus?
I
Somewhere else?
do. I don't have it in front of me, but yes, we do. We do. Boulevard, for example, the students at Boulevard are Garrity and Oxford and Noble and Boulevard. Canterbury and Fairfax feed into Fairfax, and just in the last year, because there was so much movement to help with the inter-district transfers and that, just last year, wasn't it, that the students who are at Rocks are now just at Rocks because they were pulling from a whole bunch of other schools, and that was a parent concern why some of the parents came in and requested that there be a self-contained at Fairfax, because they all didn't want to leave their home school to go to Rocks.
Do we have, make allowances for siblings of gifted students?
Yes.
So they could transfer to a school even though they may not have been identified?
The sibling can,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
Correct. So, another service that the state calls it a service is acceleration. And this isn't just for gifted students. Anybody can be accelerated. So what happens, the parent makes a request, they let us know whether they want us to look at having the student, accelerated either by subject or by grade level. We come in, the school psych tests the student both cognitively and academically. They get the scores, and then we have a committee. We sit down with the building principal, the school psych, a classroom teacher at the grade level the child is in, and the grade level above, and sometimes the counselor with the parents. And they score the test, and we have to use what's called an Iowa scale, which again is mandated by the state. You get a certain amount of points for the scores the student gets, and then there's a number of questions that the parents answer. And when all that is scored, it recommends whether or not the student can be accelerated. So again, that can be for anybody. Doesn't have to be a gifted child. At secondary, we have MSSP, middle school scholars. We service 6th and 7th grade only. We used to service 8th, but they have minute requirements also, and their minute requirements are 240 minutes, and they have the same as the elementary did. So for every subject area, they have to be in there for 240 minutes. So we stopped servicing the 8th graders because it was pulling them out of the classes they were trying to take for high school. It was messing up their seat time. And so we offer a bunch of different classes. One thing that's unique, that even though it is a resource pullout model, Cleveland Heights University Heights was approved to the state to offer it in a class setting with specific classes with names. And Cleveland Heights is the only district in the state of Ohio that offers resource room pullout like that. So the state thought that was a very unique way to service the students. And then high school. High school has no service. We do have AP classes, but that isn't considered a service. There has to be a gifted teacher tied to that along with some professional development. And when I researched it, and you haven't had services in the high school since Mr. Gulko left, Joel. And he's also our representative for AP, so we work with him and know him well. And so right now, we are working with equal opportunity schools. And we're growing our AP classes where they're becoming more equitable. We've added almost, 265 students that were eligible to go into AP classes that we didn't look at before. We've had some AP boot camps to give them support and get them ready. Last that I know of, Mr. Swagger can chime in, the students that we had that we offered the AP boot camps to in the summer, we didn't have any of them drop out this year because we made sure they were given kits and support, teacher support, interventions in place. So we're hoping to continue that and to do more with it for the future. Again, and what we hope is once we are able to get those classes on a more equitable plane, we can look at servicing at the high school level. I just wanted to put some numbers in there for you. So this is the trend data for the last 3 years, racial data, so you can see, and these are specifically for students that are serviced. And so we have been making strides that some of our numbers are staying the same, and some of them are increasing as we're using different assessment, different tests, going out and talking to teachers more, going out and talking to the principals. I can give you an example. The 3rd grade scores came back a few weeks ago for third grade, the Ohio standardized test. So the teachers went out to the buildings and spoke with the principals of the classroom teachers to find out what students scored advanced or accelerated. Again, we can't use that Ohio standardized test. But if we find out which students are doing well, and then we sent home consent forms for the students to be tested to see if we could have more students identified. And we're getting some more in, so there's a little list of students that will be tested. So that's one of the ways that we're working with the buildings, with the classroom teachers, providing them support, and we're talking to the building principals.
The gifted specialist is a designation or certification?
It's a certification, a
So you
license,
can be
yes.
certified as a teacher and then certified as a specialist?
Yes, yes.
2 years above the teacher, huh?
Well, I don't want to say it that way. But yes, because, for example, I was a classroom teacher for 15 years. Then I went and got a master's degree or a license in gifted education. So then the additional years, but you have to be a classroom teacher in order, that you have to have that license in order to get a gifted certification. And so those are some of the numbers, and I think you show that they're growing and how we're servicing students. So we're trying to expand that service. I hope this works, because as Mr. Callender said, Google wasn't working, so we tried to put it on a flash drive. So I wanted to share this with you. This is just student video, and this is how the students want to explain to you the benefits that they're getting for their individual needs. They're not saying anything about anybody else or saying that they're better than anybody, but this is how Gifted has helped them. And actually, one of their teachers is sitting back here in the back, so she helped put this together. And Mr. Callender talked about Cynthia Booker, who he took from the communications department and to become a teacher. She actually volunteered to do this for us, so we appreciate her taking this time. We tried to get both schools, Monticello and Rocks, because I didn't want a difference in the other, but they were too busy at Monticello, so we had to go. They had a lot of things going on, so we were able to just get the 2 students here.
Personally, I love being in the gifted program in this district. It gives me an opportunity, it challenges me when some other classes can't, and it gives me a chance to do what I want to do as opposed to what we do in normal classes.
Gifted to me is like an escape, kind of. In gifted, I can be with people who are on my level, and I can have like educational conversations with them.
Program, we do many things. Science Olympiad, we study for 6 months, then we take a huge test on like anatomy or diseases, or we design a craft that hovers in hovercraft. So in Model UN, we write position papers. We are assigned a committee and a country, and we write a paper on our country's perspective on the topic. And then we go to John Carroll or Columbus, and we debate with other peers about that.
Socially, I've met a lot of new people who I can relate with more, like in my classes. Like, I've met friends who I've met in the gifted program, and I have classes with them this year that we're better friends now. You know, we can talk, we can work with each other, we can study together, and they're on my level, so I don't feel like I'm moving too fast for people, or people are just with me because they know I'm gifted and they want to take answers off my paper.
It's given me a chance to meet new people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, that maybe don't have the same schedule as me or aren't in the same level of classes as me. But it's given me a chance to broaden my range of friends.
I didn't go to a school where they had like a gifted class, you know, like Roxborough and Boulevard. I went to Fairfax. So we had a pull-out program with Miss Sensick. So she would take me out of certain classes, and we would go into like the computer lab or in her, like not in like an unoccupied room. She didn't have a classroom. We were in whatever room we could find. And so I felt like it could have been better with that all schools should have a class for it, because that affected my grades when I was in the 5th grade. Like certain math things I would miss out on going to the gifted program, and then I wouldn't know what was going on, so then I would have to meet with my teachers at other times. So I felt like that could have been better put together.
I think that it could be a little easier for us to check in with our teachers when we miss classes, because, I mean, we do try, but there are times when the teachers forget something and then it ends up missing an Infinite Campus, or where we're just so busy that we don't have time. In 3rd grade, we got a chance to do 10-digit multiplications, my friend and I, because we were bored and we needed something to do, while other students were still struggling with place value in the tens, which is great because there are different levels, but it wasn't enough to support what we needed. And so in 4th grade, my teacher, can I mention teachers' names? Mrs. Craig, she understood us. She understood what we needed, and she gave us that. We had not more work, but more challenging work, which is what this program provides as well. And it gave me a really nice pathway into 5th grade. And in 4th grade, I really learned how to navigate the rest of my life almost, because I understood now what it was like to be actually challenged, which is what the rest of my life would present.
People in the gifted program who, like, there are white people, there are black people, and then they've become friends because of the gifted program, because they have relatable topics, that there's not racial barriers anymore, and that things are more together, as you would say in our school district. Like, things before, when I was younger, I would see certain 2 different groups of people. Now in the gifted program, they're all together, and people are all friends and all can talk about things together as one. I like the experience. I like experience all the different things, but like, overall, without the gifted program, I wouldn't have done bad, because I'm like, my mom always makes sure I'm always exposed to different things, and she's always tried to challenge me more. But with certain things like the gifted program, it somewhat messes with your schedule and stuff. So it wouldn't have been like, I wouldn't have been horrible off without it, but I like having the experience and going in on certain topics and like learning, furthering my education more.
Again, and thank you for those young ladies that gave us their perspective on how they saw things, especially since now they know the plan for the rest of their lives. Okay, so here's another cartoon, it's a cartoon, but I think it's very important. And it says, gifted class indeed. One is gifted in science but can't read. One is gifted in reading but won't even try math. That's some of the perceptions that we have as a district, as a people, as a community. You think a child is gifted and you think they're gifted in everything, and most of them are not. And the pressures that are put on these students, they might do exceptionally well in math and they struggle with reading. And sometimes I hear people, just because they don't know or understand, and it hurts me because I hear them say to a kid, well, you're gifted, why didn't you get that? Or, you're gifted, you weren't supposed to get that wrong. And that's why some of the kids have anxiety or stress, because of some of the things that some of the adults are saying to them, and they really want that help in understanding how do they address the adult, or how do they not internalize that information. I even heard a parent say a couple of years ago that she said, boy, the gifted, she was looking at a self-contained class, and she said, boy, the gifted classes are really going downhill because they have kids in there with IEPs. Well, that let me know that it wasn't her fault, but that she didn't understand what gifted was and what a gifted class can truly look like. So we're going to address that again in a few minutes, to just get people to understand that, just like, that's why gifted is part of exceptional children, because they have some exceptions too that they need support with. And I just need, when we have the task force, I reiterated to them, this is about the social and emotional piece. Academics is important, but this is what we need to look at first. So we have a word that's called underrepresented groups. In a lot of places, you just hear the word minority, but underrepresented groups has a bigger definition. That can include race and cultural differences and English language learners and twice exceptional, which I'm also going to go over in a minute. So you look at all these people here, and they all are very smart. They're all gifted. And you have our current president right now in the middle, and he's part of an underrepresented group because of his race. And then you have down to the bottom right, you have part of an underrepresented group with Einstein, because he has ADHD and he's gifted. And over down on the bottom, you have Whoopi Goldberg, high IQ, but she has dyslexia. And so you have different people on there that you can be gifted and still have some challenges in your life. And people need to really understand that. And it's important to see the role models that people can overcome these things. And another reason why underrepresented groups is so important, and it's I guess a buzzword that's being used now, because when you look at gifted programs across the United States, everybody's struggling with the equity piece. Cleveland Heights is having a challenge with it and having an issue, but so are other districts. And we have to try and do whatever we can, do the best that we can to try and improve that and make sure, again, that all our students are getting the support that they need in the areas that they need. Here we go again, and it was funny, I was looking at this cartoon and my daughter did the same thing just yesterday. The door says pull. He may be smart, but common sense is just not there, or he's just not paying attention because he can't figure out why he can't get the door open. Twice exceptional. Twice exceptional is a student that has the potential, or probably may or may not even have the gifted designation, but they have both. They may be highly, a high student. They may have a disability, whether it be speech or language, behavior on the spectrum, autism, or just having the ADHD. And sometimes one of the areas is not diagnosed, because sometimes maybe the student, as their giftedness is so profound that it masks the disability, or the other way around, where the disability may mask the giftedness. Because the first year I was here, the psychs did the testing for the students. The gifted teachers do a lot of it now, but so I've learned and gotten along with a lot of the psychs, and we build relationships now. So it's interesting. A lot of them will call when they have a student in the building, and when they're sitting in their SAT teams, they'll call and say, this kid is acting out, they're having problems in class, they want to, say that they're just having a lot of behavioral issues. The psychs will test them, and they'll say, Toy, here's another one. Kid has 156 IQ, but he's acting out in class. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have some behavior issues, but the child also, his behavior is being displayed so prominently, the teacher didn't know that the child was that high, and that the child needed some other accommodations, or needed just a different approach to how his lessons were being taught, because they just didn't know. So one thing that's unique is we have a lot of twice exceptional students. And again, they might have IEPs, they might have 504s, or some of them don't have any accommodations. We just know that based on their characteristics or what's going on with them, they need some help. And just in the students we serve, especially in the self-contained classroom, we have over 35 students that are labeled as twice exceptional. So we've been doing a lot of professional development and things with the teachers, so they learn how to handle the different behaviors and support the students. And again, this is why this parent didn't know that we have a lot of students like this, and they need the support as well. We had a mom send an email and said for the first time her son was in 4th grade, that he wasn't picked on, he was in the self-contained classroom, and Dr. Dixon went to go visit him last year. He wasn't picked on, he wasn't called a nerd. He was in an element where he felt safe because there were some other kids like him and the teachers were teaching him how to relate, make eye contact, and relate to the other kids. He's now at the middle school and I didn't even recognize him. He walked right past me. He's talking to people, he's making eye contact. He even spoke at Model UN last week. So that's growth and that's progress for students like him, because he had some toys lined up on his desk and Dr. Dixon went in and touched his toys and I thought he was like, oh, she's touching my, he reacted. We were like, Dr. Dixon, put his toys down, put his toys down. The kids were even saying, here, you can hold mine, just don't touch his. And now he can walk past and he can relate and he can interact with other kids. So that's what's important.
Can I add one thing to that? I just want to add one quick comment to that because it's, as Toy indicated, it is a growing population and we're seeing more of it. And what becomes a challenge sometimes is that you then have kind of competing requirements. So you have requirements around the gifted services and understanding and meeting those needs, and then you have accommodation and IEPs and 504 services. So they lead to some, very, I don't want to say intense, but there's some debate back and forth about how best to meet both needs. And it's a growing population clearly in our district, and we've recognized it, and we're trying to engage our staff and understand as much as possible. But it really is kind of two competing pieces when it comes to terms of requirements, not the student, but just how we serve. So we're continuing to work with it, but it is a challenge we're seeing more of.
Report card, just like when Dr. Johnston presented to all of you in the fall about special ed. We have certain designations on the report card. I'm not going to make any excuses for it. We look at value added, performance index, and gifted inputs. All these categories look at gifted students that are serviced and not serviced. And for 4 years, we had an A. They changed the report card measures, and this year we got an F. So we went from A to F, just like special ed. So there's some things we need to do differently. I did, put in here a report card link, and now I can't. It's jumping. Let's see if I can pull this up. To look at the report card, and I also put explanations in there for you if we're going too fast. So if you look at the first portion of the gifted for value added, that wasn't met. And what that value added is basically is, it has nothing to do with students being serviced, but our students growing each year in the classroom. And we did not meet that mark, and students are not growing from year to year. So there's something that we need to do as a district and as a whole to make sure that these children are showing growth. And gifted students are harder to show growth because some of them do so well on the test. So we need to make sure that we're working together with classroom teachers, with building principals to understand. I made sure that my staff, Miss Bird kindly came and spoke with my staff about the gifted report card because they didn't understand. So they were able to go back to the buildings and share that information, because when everybody automatically hears gifted, they're like, that's your portion, not ours. And they're not understanding that a lot of this goes on in the classroom and that we need to work together to support each other so we can make that measure. The next portion is the gifted performance index, and just like on the district report card, they look at certain grade levels, and now students' test scores are looked at. So for example, if you have a 5th grade test, if the student is identified in superior cog, they'll look at that student's test for that grade level, all of them. But if the student is identified in math, they'll look at the student's math test and how they scored. And so, like I said, looking at 5th grade, for example, the student might be identified in math, science, or superior cog, so they'll look at those scores, and it doesn't matter if we're servicing in that area or not. They're going to look at it, and we did not meet that indicator either. We received 106, and the cutoff was 116. And so we were close, but we didn't get there. And next year, that measure is going up to, I believe, 117. So we have some more work to do, again, to make sure our students are growing. The last indicator, gifted input. Now, this does have to do somewhat with students that are being serviced. It has 8 major points, I'm sorry. The first factor is the percent of students identified, just identified in the various areas. So if you look at the range of points, K through 3, we received 6 points. Well, we just started servicing grade 3 and up just 2 years ago. So we didn't get the maximum amount of points, which is 15, because we don't serve in kindergarten, first or second. So I know one of the things we're looking at is, and one of the things that we'll talk about in a minute with Hanover, parents were requesting service at earlier ages. And so that's something we need to look at, because we would have received the maximum amount of points just because we're servicing, like I said, the 3rd grade, and we received 6. And I keep saying servicing, I'm sorry, identifying in that area. So some parents are asking that we identify at an earlier age. In grades 4 through 8, we receive the maximum amount of points because we are identifying students. And then 9 through 12, we are identifying some because they're getting the map. You can also use ACT and SAT scores, and we have students that were identified earlier and they're moving up, so they look at those scores. On factor 2, then we're looking at those students and seeing who's receiving services. So K through 3, because we do service in 3rd grade, we receive 16 points. 4 through 8, we service grades 4 through 7, we received 8 points. And then, of course, we receive 0 because we don't service at the high school. And all of these go through of looking at, like I said, identifying visual and performing arts. That was one of the things we weren't doing a lot. We've increased that just since last year. When we used the musical as the service, so we looked at those students, and we're actually have some art teachers identifying students in that area as they're looking at portfolios, and we were able to go to Oxford this year and watch the students try out for the new musical that'll be out in the spring, Aladdin, and we're identifying some students at Oxford. So we will get more points with that. And then factor 4 talks about the creative thinking and that, and how those students will receive service. And again, we've also added the creative thinking piece because as a district, we were not identifying students as creative thinking. Factor 5 talks about disadvantaged students. We received 2 points. Factor 6 talks about us servicing disadvantaged students. We received 3. And as you saw on the other chart, as we're increasing the amount of students that we're servicing, hopefully those numbers will go up. And then factor 7, identification of minority students, we received a 2. And then the service of minority students, we received a 3. We did meet that indicator. That indicator is 60. Next year, that indicator goes up to 80. So even if we made a little gain, there's still a lot more work we have to do to make sure that we maintain that. The task force. Dr. Dixon already addressed Hanover, and one of the things we were able to start this year was a gifted task force. We made some attempts earlier to have some parent groups, and they kind of fell through. But I'm happy to say that this year we were able to contact, I had a meeting with some of the building principals. We said that we wanted to get a diverse group of parents that represent all the schools to come together to talk about concerns in gifted. We wanted them to work with Hanover and look at the research to see what best practices are and whether we needed to change something or improve. We needed to talk about concerns and issues in the community and the district, how it was affecting their children or affecting the children that weren't identified as gifted. So we were given a pool of names from the principals, again, a diverse group, and we meet monthly. It's been, I have to say, I was a little hesitant, but it's been a wonderful group of parents to work with. We did have a couple back there with a teacher that are here tonight. And it's exciting to watch their faces because it's like teaching class in the evening. They've learned about the report card, identification, requirements. They've gone over standards. They've looked at options. They were given the Hanover research, and we discussed that. And us having this task force definitely aligns with strategic plan goals 2 and 3. There are some of the representatives that we have from all over the district that come and meet monthly, along with a lot of the gifted staff comes. We meet on the second Wednesday of every month. Right now, they're researching different service options that we can have to see what they look like and then what will work best for our district, or whether we need to just strengthen what we have, like Dr. Dixon said. And those groups are meeting on their own, so they're meeting more frequently than just the month. They're meeting in small groups on their own. And next month, we will be looking at inviting some of the classroom teachers and some of the parents of students who don't have any identified children, so we can hear their concerns and know how we can help and support them. So when we look at Hanover research, again, they were brought in to help us with best practices to see where we can strengthen service or change it. And these are some of the things that Hanover research did for us. They conducted some student and teacher surveys. They conducted 3 parent focus groups. And those focus groups were comprised of parents of identified students and non-identified. And there was a total of 18 participants. They tried to get more people, but it happened over the summer. And everybody was out on vacation, so they didn't get a lot of answers from the participants because people were out of town. Hanover also provided the district with a summary of best practices for gifted education, and I think those were sent to them in their packets on that Friday. We received a report on ensuring equity and diversity, so looking at districts across the United States to see what they're doing with the diversity issue and their best practices. We were given a research summary on gifted education, and then they did an analysis on the focus groups. So a lot of information, and like Dr. Dixon said, all these different packets that came out of Hanover will be placed on the district website for everyone to see so they can understand what the studies are, and they have been given to the task force. We went over those in a previous meeting. So with that said, I'll summarize quickly for those that haven't seen. Everything isn't in here, but some of the research, the summaries that Hanover came up with from the focus groups. They said some of the concerns were that parents were concerned that self-contained did not reflect the district demographics. And we know we have an equity issue here that needs to be changed, and we are working on that, and we'll continue to work on it. Parents believe that they should receive communication about gifted earlier. They said the minute that you register for this district, there should be information for them readily available, and it should be on a continuous basis, that everybody should get the same information. Parents, there was a differing of opinion. Some parents wanted the testing calendar sent out to everybody, letting them know what all the assessments were and even what the gifted assessments were so they could prepare their children. And then some parents, again, the kids that have the overexcitabilities and the anxiety, they said they did not want to know because that just caused more test anxiety for their children. So there was a conflict there. And some parents felt that standardized testing wasn't the best method for gifted identification. And although I kind of agree with that, again, each state gets to make up its own requirements, but right now that's the only thing Ohio lets us use is the standardized test. One day maybe they'll get to that whole child approach where there's portfolios, testing, and other means, but we'll do the best that we can with that. Parents want an enrichment model for the entire district. You know, there are students that don't get gifted services, so they want more for those high ability kids, or just to expose the kids. You never know what a child can do if they're not exposed to it. So, and we understand they saw the enrichment model at Shaker and want something similar here. And then the parents were split because they said we have very good classroom teachers here, and we do. I go into I'm in every building. I know some of the classroom teachers, they invite me in, have excellent teachers here, but some of the parents still reported that even though their child had an excellent teacher, some of the kids were still bored and needed a little bit more depth in what it is they were learning. Positives, even though there was the equity issue, and I have to say that equity issue is at some of the buildings, it's not at all of them, that they still love self-contained and thought it fit the needs of their children the best. The kids enjoyed the pull-out program more than what they were getting because it was that added benefit from them. Majority of the students said they learned a lot from their gifted teachers. Majority of the kids were happy. That small percentage, I know the kids said they missed their friends. That's why they weren't happy. And the children feel challenged by what they're learning. And again, the special thing is parents of twice exceptional children felt that their children were assessed in the best way because their needs were being met, and they felt that we acknowledged the needs. Taking some of the concerns and some of the things that we're working on and aligning it to the goals that we have, the strategic plan, some things that we'd like to do or we're already doing. We want to make sure, again, I already mentioned that equal opportunity schools, we're working with them to increase equity in AP and have possible service later on. We're going to continue and increase the use of universal screens. I've been talking to some professors of assessment to see if there's any other tests that we can use that to help with our district in that area. Possible earlier identification and service. If nothing else, I know years ago this district had what's called a PET program, and it was an enrichment program. It wasn't necessarily gifted, but they went in and worked with the younger kids and taught them thinking skills. And I heard it was a wonderful program, and the lady retired, and they never found anybody to replace her. So I think those are some of the things that people are asking for enrichment and service in the earlier years. And again, looking at different service options. We're working in collaboration with the communications department. When you look at our website, it's difficult to find. There's just stuff listed over to the right. So working in ways that we can, I remember Mr. Silverman saying to Mr. Callender about a form or a map showing where everything's going. If we could do something, a one page, so they could go out to all the parents. And so it could be displayed and it's easy to read so that parents would be more informed of what's going on, all parents. Partnering with other districts. I have a meeting next week with a lady from Orange that is counseling some other districts on their diversity issues and just how we present information and share it. We want to make sure that we're giving professional development for all staff. We've done some little things that we've offered things to best practices to classroom teachers, but now that we're doing the professional development days and ed services to offer more for all the teachers, because all teachers can use those strategies for the students and they all can be exposed to it. And then just working with everybody. The newly renovated facilities, Mr. Callender and I talked about different things we could do for the gifted kids and exposing them to engineering with the CTE classes and getting the kids and the arts to be able to work together in the new facilities and different things that we can do just to expose everyone. Next steps. The Gifted Task Force is going to continue to meet and do research the service model. We are going to hopefully in the spring, make some recommendations to the board on what it is we would like to do, whether we're going to change or strengthen the service. We will also have a timeline in place so that we can share as we run that through ed services, because it'll be a collaboration. It's in part with student services, special ed, and Mr. Swaggart has a lot to do with that, with the enrichment and how it looks in curriculum. We want to make sure that we're implementing training for different staff, even at our new PD day we have coming up in February. We're making sure we offer it to everybody, the different best practices and topics that we're looking at. And to continue on with ed services in the curriculum department, we've already started looking at enrichment models for all students, whether it be camps, art camps, math camps, science camps, so that we can get everybody interested and everybody involved. I did want to say one thing that because of all the information I did include. I saw some of you looking at it, more data, so you have what it's like per building for this year. You have males, females, race, what the identification numbers look like, as a whole. And then I said, like I said, and broken down by gender. And also, so that you know, the gifted standards again had been voted on. They have not decided how they're gonna interpret or implement them. So that will come in March for meetings that the gifted supervisors have to have. And then we will probably have new operating standards for next school year. So when we find that information out, we'll also make sure that we share that with you. And what questions do you have for me?
I always have a lot of questions, but
Okay, I
Not sure,
guess
but-
you can go first, Jim.
Lucky me. Okay, so this is really great. So, and reading the Hanover information was really telling. It really seemed like it was spot on. And my big, $1 million question was going to be, well, how is staff interpreting it? And I guess maybe I'm answering my own question, but maybe through a question. It seems like you're sharing it with Gifted Task Force, and you're going to be coming back in the spring with really essentially, okay, well, this is the data, and this is how we think we're going to implement it. Because, I mean, I'm all excited when I see things like, enrichment services like Shaker. I mean, these are things that, parents call and tell me about, and whether we like it or not, we do compete with Shaker. And, I'd like to have as many kids as possible be in Cleveland Heights, whether they're gifted or not gifted, if we're competing for kids. Continuity is a big thing that I hear from parents, which is, I know when my kids were in the district, the program changed and changed and changed. And, some people may say it involved, but, here you are taking the most precious asset that a family has, your kids, and it's all new next year. And parents panic. Any way that we can have, and maybe it's improved. And I gotta say, even with all these crazy changes that we complained about, my kids and their peers excelled. They did great. So, I don't even know why I was even worried about it back then. But I know parents in the day, they worry. So whatever we can do as far as communicating out, I think is really, really important. And providing a sense of comfort of, hey, look, yeah, we're changing the program again, or we're improving it. But it's just, whatever we can do to, I guess, calm that fear. And I have one other issue, and that's sort of with the identification counts versus the number of kids that actually participate in the program. It seems to me if someone's been identified, what can we do to make absolutely sure that that child is where they should be? And it just seems to be that there's this huge gap of kids. Surprisingly crazy gap. Whatever we can do to prevent that, I think is good. But I'm anxious to hear what you guys come back with in the
And
spring.
that is one of the things, thank you for bringing that up, that's one of the things we're looking at in the task force is what can we do to expose everybody? To give everybody, the differentiation. Yes, the gifted kid needs some things, but so do some of the other kids. The example I give was before these operating standards were in place, we could do what this district calls us push in. I was a gifted teacher in a middle school. For example, I was in a class of 30 students, 25 of the students were gifted, 5 were not. By the end of the year, because I went in there and worked with the classroom teacher, we did lessons together, we co-taught, we didn't have the minute requirement. At the end of the year, all the students were identified. So it's sharing things. There has to be a whole mindset and perception because some classroom teachers don't want the gifted teachers in there. That's something we need to work together because it's their domain. Everybody's worried about OTES and report card and the effect of their job, but it's something we need to work together. And Mr. Swaggart and I have constant, conversations about what that looks like, what's good for everybody. We did also get the opportunity when we went to Shaker. And it's funny, we spent the day at Woodbury Middle School, and they were showing us how they set up their enrichment, and it was fabulous. And then they were asking us, how do we do gifted? Because they don't have gifted services. And they're saying they want to start gifted, but they have to figure out what that looks like. So whatever we can do for both schools to help each other out, because some of our students are leaving here and going over there, and then they're saying, what, you don't have gifted? I ran into one of our students. He looked at me. He looked at my tag. He looked really confused. And I had to tell him, yes, you see me, and yes, you were used to me in Cleveland Heights. I'm just here visiting today. And he was like, oh, thank you, because he got confused. He couldn't remember where he saw me. And so we don't want to lose our students, but they're also getting over there and not necessarily getting what they need either. So.
Just piggyback on your comment, question, sort of. I thought that one gap that you answered a question about a gap between gifted and non-gifted, I guess, in terms of what you saw in that classroom. But I thought there was a issue that you were raising between people who were identified versus people who actually end up in a
service.
In the service. And I guess I want to move that a little further and ask this question, I guess. What percentage of the kids that we identify actually end up in a service?
Not very many. I think it was 43%, and that's higher now than what it was before. I think last year it was like 23%.
Yeah, and I bring that up because I thought that was one question that you were actually asking. Is there things that we need to be doing or should be thinking about doing in terms of raising that percentage of students who actually are identified and move into service?
Some of our issue was the service model with those minute requirements. You would need if you have students identified in several areas because of the minutes, you would need either so many staff members, and it would cause more of a problem because those kids are getting pulled out of the regular classroom. So I'm glad the minutes have gone away now with these new standards, but they're still making a time requirement on there, and we don't understand what that looks like yet because they haven't told us. So that's what we're kind of waiting. It said something about 15% of the regular content. But again, we can't interpret that. We have to wait for the state to tell us because how they interpret that will determine how we can service. There is a model called clustering, which allows you to group students, and they're not necessarily gifted, but high ability, and making sure that the classroom has a section of high, medium, and low students. So the teacher is differentiating, and then there's PD and meetings done with the gifted teacher, so you're able to service a larger group. So that was one of the models we're looking at, so we can service more students. But we're really gonna have to find out how they're gonna interpret those laws before we can give an actual answer.
I got a couple more questions, I guess.
Okay.
One of them has to do with funding. And it seems to me that, well, there's two pieces of this. One is we get a certain amount of funding for students that actually enroll, or do we get funding for students that are actually enrolled in gifted programs or gifted services?
We only get money for students that we get a certain percentage, and don't quote me on what that number is right now at the top of my head. We get them for identification. We don't get them. We don't get anything for service. That's an unfunded mandate. She's handing me something. Okay. Yes, we only get a certain amount for identification.
Okay, having gotten there, then when we think about the self-contained classrooms and the pullouts and all that, we're not actually getting funded for that then. That's something that we decided that we would do.
Above and beyond, that's correct.
So the place that I wanted to go with this is here. The state mandates the testing that we have to do relative to identification.
Correct.
And if we wanted to do something different with those students in terms of the services that we provide, we're free to create our own models. Is that correct?
Okay. Okay, we got to be careful with this. Okay, so that, yes, you're correct. The state mandates the testing and what tests we can use. If we're calling it a gifted service, we have to do what they say we can do. We can't just do what we want. Now, if we're taking those students and we're creating our own enrichment, we can do that, but we can't call it gifted. And it won't go in EMIS as gifted. So then those inputs on that last part of the report card, they won't count.
Okay, well, we're getting at where I'm trying to go then.
Okay.
The value of being labeled gifted is what? What does that do for us?
Well, well, for the student,
I'm not talking about the
For the
student
student, you're
necessarily,
talking for the
because
district.
I think, here's what I
Okay.
think my suspicion is. My suspicion is that we get negative out of identification and putting people in services as well as positives. In other
Okay.
words, I think when we take students and say, you're like the lady was saying, the student was saying, hey, I don't have to deal with these other people that are not quite at my level anymore. I'm with students that are at my level. I think that has an impact on how other students in the school think about themselves.
But she does have to deal with them. She's in a pull-out class. She's only in there for a certain amount of time.
But my question still stands, because I think the idea that this notion of giftedness has an impact on those others who we say you're not.
Yes.
I think it has a significant impact. And so when we get away from what the mandate is from the state level, then I think we have to think about these other things as well, because I'm not sure that the testing and identification is unbiased. And I throw it out there because that's sort of in me in terms of what we're actually doing. So I think about what is the impact that we have, not just on the gifted students, but the other students as well.
And I think that's one of the main reasons we asked Hanover Research to assist us with this research, this study, because of the overwhelming amount of thoughts about our design.
Right.
Our program design. So it's twofold. I believe that the students, they have a need that we need to meet. Now we can look at a different approach that's within those guidelines, those standards of how we service the students, and that's what the task force and Toya is going to do, to look at some others, because you can have a mixed method of making sure the students are serviced.
Right.
So I think we need to be more intentional about what our approach is, and the impact of our approach on other students and vice versa. That's important.
Right. And so if I think that we're only serving 43% of those that are tested,
Right.
I really am concerned about what's happening with all these other students. Why is it our not having the capacity to deal with them, or they're making some choice about who they want to be or not? When I was growing up, I had a problem with being different, because I usually was at the top of the class. I had a real problem with always being singled out. So I'm just bringing this.
And
because
that's
I think,
one of and you make a very valid point, and so do they. And that's one of the reasons why we're using the mindfulness and some of the things we're talking to them about, because we're not telling them that they're better. We're telling them that we're addressing the needs that they have, because everybody has something that they're special in, that they do well. But we also want to make sure that we're just not leaving them hanging, and they're not getting the support that they need either. But we don't want anybody to feel bad, because I think coming in here, there's a huge perception issue in this district. And coming from the largest district in the state to here, I didn't see that perception issue there, but here it's very much just like some of the buildings, the have and have not. So there's something we need to do communication wise to help people to understand this isn't about being better than anybody, but giving people what they need and helping to support them. But we're not trying to isolate people. we're making sure, for example, a lot of the self-contained teachers asked this year for their building principals to work on their schedules so that the gifted kids weren't so isolated. So they were doing lunch and having their, I know Fairfax started this. Then Rocks was trying to implement it where they're mixing the arts classes and that so the kids aren't isolated. And the teachers are sharing at the TBT, sharing lessons and doing things and collaborating a lot with teams. So we are mixing their groups.
The question of, or the decision not to offer any gifted programming at the high school, can you say a little bit more about that?
When I came in here, there was no offering just because they didn't have anybody to handle that portion. And again, just having an AP class isn't a type of service. So if you were gonna offer it, I've been in a district before that has offered service at the high school, but we need to get the AP classes a little bit more equitable. Then there needs to be, one of the models is to have a gifted person, someone with the license there, working with the classroom teachers, differentiating, meeting with them, giving them professional development. Or there is a model where there can be honors classes that you can record in EMIS as gifted, but all of them center around some type of gifted PD or having some contact with a gifted teacher. And
Simply mean that we don't have certification of gifted teachers at the high school? Is that what that means?
Which means we don't have anybody who's assigned to provide that, that's not their assignment.
because a gifted teacher, their license is, well, the old license was K through 22. Now they're K through 12. So regardless of a gifted teacher is teaching in elementary or middle, their license goes all the way up to 12th grade.
So
But-
it's a choice we made.
Yes, it's a choice the district made.
Oh.
And I have people whispering to me in the audience, and I'm trying to read lips. And they wanted to make sure that you all understood that there are reasons why some of the students were not serviced, because we only service 3 through 7. So you have kindergarten, first and second, and then in 8th, I added 3rd grade when I came here. There wasn't even any service in 3rd grade before 2 years ago. And then in 8th, so we have a lot of gaps where students aren't being serviced because we're trying to slowly figure out how to do the best service without disrupting students and figuring out what that looks like. And now, our operating standards are changing, so.
But we don't do the identification before 2nd grade, right?
Unless someone asks. No, we don't. We start in 2nd, but trust me, we have a lot of parents in kindergarten asking. So when they do ask, we do test them. And you have that early entrance process that's also a state requirement that I'm over with. And if they come into the district and start kindergarten here, you have some kindergartens, they're identified that way. They can't be ID'd just from the testing because they're officially not in school yet, but once they enroll, and if that child has that score of a 128 or above, then we can automatically identify them. So we have some little kindergartners running around with 140, 156 scores.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the research, it just seems like this is really, there's lots of moving pieces. And, how do you put priority on the right one to sort of get the right piece? I find it somewhat ironic that, Shaker doesn't have a gifted program. They've got the enrichment program. And they're looking at going into a gifted program, and sort of what I'm hearing now, it's like we're now looking at being more of sort of the enrichment program and maybe rejiggering our gifted program, but yeah, my mind's gonna blow. Is there, there is.
I don't want, that's not true. We're not.
No, it's gonna stay
I
together.
mean,
No, not his brain.
we're looking at enrichment program. We're looking at strategies.
I get.
Okay.
I know that.
But
know.
I don't want anyone to take
No.
leave out thinking that we were.
No,
okay.
I mean, I think we need to be patient and let the task force do its job. And, hear from what we could implement and also sort of what parents, I think what we're providing is some, maybe some feedback today. I mean, personally, I don't like the gifted word. I mean, I don't like when a teacher or someone walks into a classroom and says, "Okay, gifted kids, it's time to go to your next classroom." I mean, it's like, what does it do to all the other kids? I mean,
Right, I don't like
so,
that either.
Yeah, so
Right,
we
no.
need to either rethink language or how it's communicated. But there's also sort of the identification process, and there's probably no good number to really figure out, except we found it out at the high school. We had kids that should be in AP classes that weren't, and it was obvious that these kids should have been in these classes, but we just didn't, it wasn't obvious to us. And sort of, it's sort of like that child that, was off the charts, who wanted to be self-identified. We need to be doing more of that. And your example of, if you would just teach gifted kids, if you just take a classroom and teach gifted education, I bet you'd find out there's twice as many more kids in that room that were gifted that you'd never even know about.
Exactly.
I mean, we have a very, very interesting demographic across all racial lines in Cleveland Heights. I mean, people come here for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different races to find the best thing for their kid, and they know it's a little different. They know it's not Solon. They know it's Cleveland Heights, and they sort of like that. I think we need to cater to that, to that market, and figure out the best way to take advantage of it.
I agree, and that's one thing I talk to the teachers about, whatever the perception is and whatever you thought. I tell them to talk to the kids about shoes. I always use the example of a pair of shoes. Most people wear shoes, and we all wear different sizes, different types, but we all need shoes. Just like there's some things that you need that I may not need, and vice versa. But just because you wear a certain type of shoe doesn't mean you're better. But it just needs you need what fits your foot and what's best for you. And the perception of, oh, we're better than you, oh, we need this. And I think if most people knew sometimes what a gifted class looks like and all the different ranges and the behaviors and all the things that some of the teachers have to deal with, because they have to tell some of the classroom teachers, the kids aren't perfect. They have their challenges and struggles too. And that it's a perception. I've had people tell me they get mad because their child doesn't get identified, and tell me that oh, we're going to keep testing them. That poor child. You're going to test them and pay somebody to test them 4 or 5 times, then make them something. That's more about the parent than the child. And if we were all doing best practices and doing what we needed to do for these students overall, you probably wouldn't need gifted. But we aren't there yet as a district. Until we get to that point, we need to supply people with what they need. And when we're doing best practices and all the teachers can differentiate and teach at different levels, and we're doing well, then I will be the first one to say, you don't need this regardless of what the state is saying. And now districts are playing this number game because of how that grade card is set up. Well, if I say this is service over here and I hurry up and identify here, I get more points, and then there we go. But we're not playing a numbers game here. These are lives. These are children we're supposed to be looking at.
This is a great segue into, I just stating my bias, I always have a problem with this topic. I don't feel good about it. I appreciate all that you've gone through with this, but can you put up the second slide, your second slide again? No, not that. Next one. No, before the cartoon. That one.
That one.
Right. So if you make that full screen, or if you know, yeah. Okay, next one. Yeah, that one. So why does that say giftedness in it? That should say for every single student in our district.
Oh, it should. It
Period.
should. But
period.
specifically
I mean,
that
right.
was, yeah.
And so what happens is, even in the way we're promoting it, This is, and again, I'm not accusing anyone, I'm just saying this is what happens. This is creating a caste system. It plays into a caste system is probably a better way than creating. We're not creating it, we're playing into a caste system. I'm not in any way suggesting see, I guess to me, every student has individual unique needs. By creating a gifted category, someone is suggesting that the body of children who are identified as gifted have this set of unique needs. And I'm not convinced that, I think every single one of our students have their own set of unique needs, and we have to meet every single one of our students' unique needs. So it's very difficult for me, and probably I'm that person on the Hanover stay that you didn't want to hear from, but I will tell you that, I mean, I've been reading a bunch about, there's a whole body of work that suggests that giftedness suggests some innate talent, and there's a whole body of work that suggests that talent is not what is not the major factor as much as hard work, experiences, opportunities. And so what I guess I find myself wondering is not even if children are being identified that need to be identified, but what are we doing to create the opportunities they need? And you guys, different people in the room brought this up, but I listened to those two young ladies speak, and while I feel good for them, what they're saying is, my classroom's engaging.
Yes,
and that other classroom's not engaging at all. And they may be saying because they're gifted, but that's not that's not it. So do the other kids in there, do they find it engaging? And if not, why aren't we addressing that? Right. So I'm not in any way suggesting that this is a wasted effort. Absolutely, we have to address those kids' needs, absolutely. But we should be also looking at how are we, to me, it's how do we generalize this to the whole population?
And that's
if I look sour about it, I just never feel good about this.
I don't take it personally, because you're right, because my license isn't gifted, so I'm looking at gifted kids. But if you're looking at kids overall, this isn't a gifted issue. This is a district issue that should be
bigger than that.
That should be with everybody.
Right.
And I state again, if everybody was getting what they needed, and if we had we were leveling and tiering and doing the best practices overall, we wouldn't need this.
Right. So the only other thing I was going to suggest, it's late and I really don't want to, just go on this big soapbox too much, but some of it is also educating the parents, because as you're right, and I remember this from when I was in PTA, parents, oh my gosh, you've got to put my child in the gifted program because the gifted program, but rather help them understand what experiences can they provide to their children that will actually enrich them and help them even more than just, this is sort of this silver tower, golden tower, whatever I say. Ivory, that's it. It's some substance. But anyway, I do think that there's a bigger picture here to be looked at. So anyway, I'll stop.
I think we ought to keep challenging ourselves, because if you move 2 slides down, the one thing that I did initially was underline this word giftedness, because it begs for the definition. And so we got to this screen and it defined it. And the definition is within federal and state laws.
You know that.
So
you know how gifted they are.
Yeah. So here we are. We're part of a culture that has put some value.
Right.
But
we get to define our culture.
Well, see, what we like is we are not tied to the service. We might be. I mean, there may be some real monetary value related to it, and I haven't figured that out. Scott, do you know how much it's worth to us to know that we got a gifted child in our midst?
I don't.
It would be interesting just, to really play around with this. I don't know what happens in the spring, but it's going to be interesting, because I think there's going to be more discussion around these same points. And I don't know if there is a way to really get there. But I think Cleveland Heights, or this board, might be moving to the point that, can we break the mold on how we think about this issue? And what does that look like?
Right. So I think if you go back and look at your cards again and just look at our core values that we stated in our strategic plan, And we stated that the Cleveland Heights University High School District is deeply committed to educational equity and providing an excellent education for all of our students in every one of our schools. This gifted program has been in the district. So yes, we can disband it and say we get rid of it and we go with another model. Or we can do as we're currently doing, we can look at strengthening the model, looking at best practices from other districts, so that we are still servicing the students that need the service. So yes, we have the autonomy of changing what the model looks like. I think we are on the right track we have a group of stakeholders who are looking at it and are challenging themselves. They're learning more about the model. They're learning different ways that we can implement the model. We can admit, and I mean, Atoya has stated several times, that she has been in this district, she has made some changes to the program model that was existing. So I think we are making a bold step by saying we want someone else to help us look at what we're doing. We don't want to do damage to kids or our teachers. I agree, Cal. We want excellent education in all of our, we don't want parents, and we have parents that come to us and they demand to get in a gifted program because they believe the gifted teachers are the better teachers.
Yeah.
So it's a teaching issue that we're facing. You know, why is it the perception that our teachers that teach gifted kids are better? Why is there perception that we have all white students in our gifted class and no blacks? Those are all perceptions that people think that white students are smarter than black students. But we have lived with that in this district. And it won't go away overnight. We have to make some concentrated efforts, be very intentional about education equity, be very intentional about what we expose our students to, those experiences. And that's what we're doing. So yes, it won't happen overnight. And I think it would be wrong for us to totally say that we're going to stop the services, because these are kids, these are lives. They depend on these services. It's the adults that may not have implemented it in the best way, and we can strengthen the implementation model. So I think we're on the right track. We are going to come back to the board to kind of, with some next steps and what that looks like. But we're going to ensure that that core value stands, that we're going to make sure we have educational equity and make sure we're providing excellent education for all of our students.
Yeah. I think we're all on the same page here. I think we do, when we have opportunities, we do want to challenge ourselves about where we are. And I really think we're in the right place too. That the idea that we would be looking at something in the spring, I think some of these issues will come up. I mean, there will be further conversations about how we do better. And I think, Cal probably expressed it better than I ever could. But the idea that it's every child that we're concerned about, and I hear that reflected in throughout this whole conversation. But
For the record, so do I.
Yes.
yeah.
I don't want to belabor it because of the time frame, but the super mentioned it is one of the things when I was looking at the numbers, and it's something that I think when the district went with the self-contained classroom model, or when we have the buildings we have the self-contained programs at, goes back to something when they first did it under, I think, 2 predecessors ago, was the identification of which buildings we were utilizing only fit into the pre-existing narrative that certain buildings were where there is manna from heaven. And as I think 4 of the board members here either currently or previously lived north of Mayfield, the fact that there's no building with a pull-out program north of Mayfield, it's Roxborough, it's Fairfax, and Boulevard's the only other one with, self-contained, and Boulevard had a large number of students come over from Coventry. So now Fairfax, I understand it's a big building, so it has a capacity. I think, if anything, we err by where we have, if we're going to have that kind of a program, even the placement of the program reinforces pre-existing perceptions that go back 75 years in regard to buildings. So I want to mention that as well, because it predates, it has more of a socioeconomic issue as purely a demographic issue. So I think if we're going to look at addressing perceptions, we need to address, if you're going to have a program like this, which buildings do you put it in? Because if you put it in buildings that already reinforce the narrative, you're just adding more to it. And I will say, I think Mr. Wortman's department, with those graphics they've been doing, those infographics, I would highly recommend doing 11 by 17, like I said, for CTE, the same thing for gifted. The ability to have a very simple visual representation of a pathway, a program, and options, I think that would go a long way to giving something very simple that people can look at and address them. And I know the Wortman's department's been doing an excellent job with that, and I know Scott's always looking for more work to do, so I think that if we can task them with that, again, it's because it's relatively cost-effective,
Yeah.
and it's a visual, I think a visual methodology to convey what can be a complex process can go a long way.
Yep. Good.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
I agree with that.
Good job. Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very enlightening. Is there any other business that need to come before us this evening?
God, no.
I love that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hold on, wait.
Well,
We have to talk about the FAC agenda, don't we?
No, we don't.
No,
No, we don't.
Okay.
You don't want to talk about
not, do we?
it. No, we don't have to talk about it.
It's gotta change.
I don't think we need to talk about it, no. I don't think so. We can talk about it, but I don't think we need to talk about it now.
Not at 10:15 on Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we got 7 days or 8 days,
10 days.
not 10 days, oh.
I was in the
I think
gifted
we have
classes,
to-
I know how to do that math.
They have some work to do before they meet with us to make it an effective meeting. And I'm a little worried that they're not gonna get, if they think that's the agenda, not reporting out to us, I think that's gonna be a problem.
Well, I don't know what the conversation would look like, so I don't know if I can manage the conversation. But you, as a board member, you're free to open any conversation you wish. I mean, if you got something to say, we're still in session.
Well, I mean, okay, we have an agenda. When we met during the retreat, we were very specific, and we needed to sort of talk about one. They needed a report back out to us in one simple form. We have minutes from their meetings. They've referred to coming up with a new set of reports that I don't believe has happened yet. I'd certainly like to see whatever they are thinking about presenting to us in advance of the meeting, because I don't think it's going to be a useful meeting if they haven't done the work. Now, I mean, maybe two of us can have a conversation with the chair and see what they're thinking about. I mean, I'm not sure how to approach it.
I mean,
Go ahead.
my take, I mean, they gave us a report, or one of the attachments we received was a report of, which was an updated iteration of their previous reports. I think if memory serves, technically by the original charge, this was sort of a extension, okay, let's have a report and see what's going forward. So, I mean, I hate to say it, ultimately, they have to be, it's their, the work, to a degree, the onus is on them. They're supposed to be independent. This is their report to us. I think we can say, hey, we agree with this, we disagree with you on that, and see what they're suggesting. So I know it's an opportunity for them to present and meet with us. I wouldn't say that, I hate to say it, let them, we can lead the horse to water and let them drink. This is, what are you bringing to us? I don't really think we should be completely dictating what they bring to us, because ultimately they're responsible for what they bring to us. So, I mean, we've sort of encouraged, hey, this is what we're looking for. I still don't know if they have the sustainability component in the last PDF. That's on them.
Excuse me, just 1 second. Thank you. You don't necessarily have to sit in that seat while we go through this conversation. And we appreciate you coming to us. And like I said, I think it was very informative. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in spring. So. Okay.
Well, can we just?
No,
put-
we're in session.
Yeah, I mean, can we just make sure that because when you look at, okay, so what Eric articulated is really not what's articulated in their agenda. Their agenda is almost as if it's their meeting and we're just sitting interlooking.
Okay, let me just say this. We noticed the meeting, it's our meeting, we haven't set an agenda for that meeting. What you're saying now, as far as I'm concerned, is input to formulate the agenda for that meeting. That's how I see it.
Well, in that case, then, because now, from what you're saying, what Ron's saying, if in that case, I think then what I would suggest is the board president reach out to CHUH and say, hey, CHUH, just an FYI, this is our board, this is the board meeting. This isn't a FAC meeting that the board's attending. This is a board meeting that FAC is attending, which it sounds semantics, but it really is, that it's Ron and the board Ron sets the agenda for the meeting.
Ron, I would be okay with you setting an agenda, and if you solicit input from anyone, that would be fine. I don't think that has to be done in an open meeting.
Right.
Right, I agree. So, anything else?
No.
I didn't get a motion, did I? Did I?
We need a second.
I'm waiting for a second.
I need a second for the motion to adjourn.
I'll second it as well.
No, you can't do that. Beverly's doing it. Okay. Mr. Gainer, would you call the roll?
Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Mr. Register.
Yes.
Mr. Silverman.
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Mr. Zup.
Yes.